Okay. Let's bring in the jury.
All rise for the jury. Over. I'm going to take the order. In the wrong place. You don't want to. You don't want to be looking at me. Is he bringing it? He's bringing juries. Oh. She's looking at me. I want to. I'm going to get to it, so I want to see some of the stuff we can.
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and counsel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience with us. Ms. Lewis, you may continue with cross-examination.
Thank you.
Good morning. In my opinion, it wasn't pertinent to read all sections about every single activity, course, class, interaction.
Is that the reason you did not immediately subscribe to our weekly newsletter and start monitoring the weekly statements about what was happening in the book?
That's correct.
You chose not to monitor the teachers, the classes, the interactions.
I believe you had a calendar on your website, and I did monitor the calendar that had links with information about times of classes and that kind of thing. So I subscribed in that manner, but not in the form of a newsletter. That's correct.
So since this is a criminal enterprise case involving people crossing state borders, people crossing international borders, people going...
Section, this states the law, Your Honor.
I'm sorry?
This states the law about crossing
Well, I
borders.
didn't mention the law, I just said that teachers and students were coming and going across state borders and international borders, which I think would be of interest in a criminal investigation.
All right. Finish your question.
I didn't actually offer any law. As a detective, were you not concerned with every detail of the alleged criminal enterprise at the outset of your investigation?
I was not. I was concerned with the practitioners and their activities.
Okay, thank you. Now, we revealed so far that out of 40 people, 2 locations, etc., that only 5 people were accused
Yes.
It misstates
5.
the facts, Judge. 5 accused of criminal activity. That's
I'm sorry, 5.
Sustained.
Prostitution, let me be clear. 5 people were accused of prostitution.
That is,
By your detectives, which we're about to hear.
that's correct.
Okay. And then the underlying crime for the entire criminal enterprise is prostitution.
That's correct.
Correct. So money laundering, pandering, all that stuff, criminal enterprise is not there unless you actually have prostitutes.
Prostitutes or other illegal activity, but in this case, prostitution, yes.
Would you clarify for us there was no other illegal activity other than that related to the charges? You didn't find all that stuff.
Correct. You just spoke in general terms. To have an illegal enterprise case or to have pandering case or some of these other cases, you mentioned you have to have prostitution. I just want to be clear that that's not the case. But in this particular case, prostitution was the underlying. Yes.
So it's confusing to me because you stated in prior testimony that you would not take down an entire Methodist, Catholic, Baptist church if a couple people, a small percent of people, were accused of doing something illegal. Let's say that this is transposed to the Catholic Church. A couple people are accused of something illegal and bad. Yet, in any investigation like that, from my perspective, respect was given to the Catholic Church in that scenario. They didn't take down the choir director, the secretary, all that. They just went after those 2 priests that did that. Is that correct?
I don't have any understanding of that Catholic investigation that you're referring to. I'm sorry.
Does it seem fair to you that you would use the power of your office to take down a 4,000-member faith-based community in Sedona and Phoenix? 4,000 people, dozens of teachers, and you felt comfortable taking out an entire community of 4,000 people because you thought 5 of them had committed prostitution, a victimless crime?
That's not entirely accurate, but yes, I believe.
Well, your only definition of victim is the people who were arrested.
No, I don't mean that portion is not entirely accurate. You indicated that there were only 5 individuals that were engaging in that activity when in fact that's not the case.
We're not going to be able to prove that now because they are no longer up on prostitution charges. They were convinced. Isn't it true that they were all presented with evidence? Or, come on, let's take it over. Never mind, we'll get back to my spreadsheet. Sorry about that. Okay. So you did feel comfortable taking down the entire community when only 5 people had prostitution charges?
Yes.
You did feel comfortable. Was there any discussion in your unit about allowing the church to stay open as a school, as Sunday services, as study programs, the healing and social programs? Was there any discussion of allowing that portion of the community that weren't doing anything related to that page? Was there any discussion of allowing it to continue and only taking out the people who were charged?
Yes, that's what we did. Only those individuals that were charged were arrested and anybody else was not.
Was there ever any talk about, well, we've got this huge community, we've got 5 people we're charging with prostitution. Is this a little bit overreacting to take out all these people when we got 5 people who've actually been charged with the underlying?
I lost it.
Was there any discussion of just letting the rest of it be and just going after the alleged prostitutes? Was there any discussion of that in your unit?
There was not, because we just determined that all the other practitioners were operating in the same manner. So if we extended this investigation from a 6-month to a year-long investigation, it was our belief that we could have had made prostitution deals with the other 35 individuals that you're referring to.
Okay. Did you see any societal value in what was offered at the temple, the programs, the rape and incest recovery, the healing and revealing meditations, the Friday night session for all, the socials, the Sundays? Did you see any societal value in the programs at the temple?
Objection relevance, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Okay. I'd like to unearth
6.
6. You only visited with 6 people.
Yes.
Okay.
6, just to be clear, we only visited with 6 individuals that were practitioners. That doesn't take into consideration the other staff that we visited with, to include Janet Craven and Tamara Brusso.
Correct. Okay. And you chose not to use the email method, and you chose not to really pay attention to what the gatekeepers were saying. You said yesterday that you didn't do an email, entrapment or whatever, an email, whatever. You didn't attempt to solicit us through the emails.
No, we did not.
Okay. And then, how many times did your people call the gatekeepers?
They called the gatekeepers only to set up dates or sessions with your practitioners.
Okay. So you never once considered sparing the larger community over what 5 people were using? Never once thought that?
No, we did not.
So in your professional opinion, Sunday services, ordination, healing, revealing, sexual trauma, mystic sister, moon circle, sex ed for all, the schools where we were training people, and none of that had to do with Backpage. In your professional opinion, you have the right and responsibility to take out this entire community based on those 5.
We have a duty to abide by the laws that are set forth in Title 13. There were many people, as you know, that were not charged within your organization that could have maintained those types of activities if they chose to, but did not.
I have a question. Why did you pursue undercover wiretaps? Because 2 of the 5 women are charged with prostitution. They were not at the temple. They were not tied in the temple from that ceremony. Why did you include those 2 women when they weren't tithing, they weren't scheduled by the temple people, they weren't referred by, nothing had to do with temple. They were in their private spaces. We're talking about Elizabeth Lyden and August Starr were in their private residences, and they were, so 2 of those 5 people were not even in the temple. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So how did you come to draw those people in when they weren't actually practitioners in the temple? How did you come to draw them in? They were former practitioners, but not currently practitioners, and they were not giving money to the temple for that too. So how did you decide to put them in and leave them?
The decision to include them as part of this investigation was one, Audrey Starr on her Backpage advertisement actually referred to setting up appointments either in her private residence, as you've mentioned, or also within the confines of the Phoenix Goddess Temple. And it also included the website address, I believe, for the Phoenix Goddess Temple to set up. Elizabeth Lyden had been working in the temple and had posted ads in the temple, and then a very short period of time later, she started posting on her own. So
Are you aware that Elizabeth Lyden left unhappy with the temple?
I'm aware of that now, yes.
Okay. And are you aware that she had no connection to the temple? She was not booking through us, correct? Not scheduling through us?
The date that we set up, she was not. You're
No,
correct.
she was not. She
Right.
left the temple.
Right.
She had left the temple. Did she indicate that she was giving any kind of money to the temple from her activity?
She did not for that particular
So I'm
date.
trying to understand how I'm responsible for what this woman who's angry at me did in her home after she left. Can you explain that responsibility that I have when she had actually left? Wasn't on the website, wasn't tiling anything?
Sure. It was actually our intention of reaching out to somebody that was no longer, in our opinions, affiliated with the temple, in that her ads did not appear to look the same, so that we could get a sense of the disconnect, perhaps, as to why she left or why she was no longer practicing. Oftentimes you can glean a lot of information from somebody who's recently left the organization, and so that was why the decision was made to contact her.
So in your professional opinion, after
I did not say that, no.
But you did say that. You put it in as evidence in this case.
Yes.
So am I responsible for what Elizabeth Lyden did in her home?
I do.
She angrily left me in the temple. Am I responsible?
I would say no.
Thank you. Why did you put her into this case? Why is she in this case?
Because she's connected with this case in that she, at the very least, even if she's not somebody.
Objection, Your Honor. Can you let the witness finish, please?
All right, the questions
It was
was,
not a yes or no question, Your Honor.
the questions withdrawn. You may pursue it on redirect.
In the case of Soleil, in the case of Bast, if no money was being given from her practice at her home, that she was doing her way in her home, if there was no ties, no support flowing from those activities back to the temple, how is that commerce between you and this woman?
I have no knowledge of your arrangement with her.
Did you find any evidence that these women who were practicing in their homes were giving money back to the temple?
I know there were extensive financial records kept. I don't know specifically that we looked to see on this particular day that this deal was set up as to whether or not she tied back to the temple.
When you included today these two offsite homes, it was really clear that there was no financial benefit to temple from these women.
I would include their testimony as witnesses, yes.
Did you make any differentiation in your undercover about women who were active in temple life and women who weren't active in temple life?
By active, could you let me know what you mean by that?
Sister circles, being in the classes, showing up for the high holy days. Did you differentiate between these women seem to really be following the program, we got a few over here that aren't? Did you make any notice of that?
We were very interested in understanding what was required of them, and took note of who attended, like the course that we were at, and who attended just from your own YouTube videos, what were posted online, who appeared to be in those Sunday circles that were shown online, to determine if it was maybe a mandatory or encouraged practice for all.
Did you discover any mandatory or encouraged practices at the temple?
I would not say mandatory, because there was limited participation in the events that we attended. And
did you find that anything was mandatory in your investigation?
tithing.
Did you discover that women and men who were practicing at the temple were able to not give any financial tithe if they were willing to act in service in some other way? Did you uncover that there were a number of people who were not tithing money but instead were tithing service? Did you notice that in your investigation?
I did not find any documentation of that.
Your Honor, please.
Sustained.
Your Honor.
Okay. No
Okay.
comment. Excuse me, Ms. Elise. The jury will disregard the last statement made by Ms. Elise. You may continue.
So your answer was you did or did not differentiate between the women who were active and the women who were not active.
There was no differentiation between them.
You mentioned, and if you were to state it anyway, that the conclusion drawn by the entire investigation that the Phoenix Goddess Temple was a cash-only business.
That is correct.
Okay. And one of the testimonies given by the state was that we had a net spend card and that everything was paid off with that, et cetera.
I don't recall exactly what they said. I don't believe that to be the case, that everything was paid on net spend.
Okay, they presented something about
Your Honor. Please, let's continue commentary.
I thought we were referencing this testimony on our apologies.
Ask a question. Don't comment on the response.
Were you aware that the temple was indeed able to take credit card transactions during the period of discovery?
I was not aware of that.
Okay. Is it true in your professional experience that credit cards increase the amount of business
For most commerce, that's the case, yes.
Have you ever talked to anyone in the prostitution escort agency business who sells credit card machines to people who run agencies?
No, I have not.
You're not aware of what the industry standard is on how credit cards are used in the industry?
Limited general knowledge about fees.
Have you ever heard about what those people say about credit card use?
No, those individuals that we come in contact with that are escorts that have credit card usage, that's the little squares that go on the top of their cell phones. We've seen that. Sometimes, yeah.
In your opinion, what would cause I want to get to, because you're a big picture person in the police department, you're one of the big picture people. Is that true?
Every one of us vice detectives have the same responsibility. We each, big picture, I think you mean in reference to this case as a case agent?
No, I meant big picture, like how you serve the community at large, something like that.
We each have the same responsibilities. Some of us provide more training than others and have a little bit of, specialty in certain areas, but in the vice unit, we all have very, very similar responsibilities.
What is do you know the oath you took by heart? Do you remember the oath that you served under?
No, I don't.
Let's see. When we get into undercover ethics, okay, could you speak to the ethics as an undercover detective of presenting yourself as something you are not? Could you go undercover? Could you speak to the ethics of that?
Objection.
There is an ethics to, showing up and lying about who you are and lying about why you're there. There's an ethics. If I was at, say, a NARC or something, I pretend to be a drug buyer or a drug seller, and I pretend to be that, but I wouldn't be that. There's an ethic to that. Can you address the ethics of going undercover and presenting yourself in a false way to achieve an end?
Objection, relevance, Your Honor.
Sustained.
I can address the ethics of that.
Approach, please.
Thank you.
All right, well, the legality of it or the ethics of it?
The ethics.
Okay. Why would the ethics be relevant to this case?
Because every one of their people came in and signed a secret form and said that they were interested in this, interested in that. They understood that they weren't going to get sexual. They did that whole thing, but they weren't really interested in learning about the goddess. They weren't really there to have a woman guide them in a new experience. They were actually there in a false manner.
Okay.
And there's an ethic to that. I found out that even these guys can lie during plea bargain negotiations. I was told by my attorney, David Couture, that because I'm a criminal, they get to be criminals and lie about stuff. Right. And I know there's an underlying theory of why that's okay. And I was told the underlying theory why it's okay to lie when you're undercover.
I'm not going to address what Mr. Couture said about prosecutors lying during settlement negotiations. That certainly has never been my experience. I don't know what he was referring to.
He said that prosecutors can say anything they want to elicit the plea without even having evidence. That if
That's
a person
not true.
confesses, the evidence is on.
Tracy, that's not true.
Okay,
You have an ethical responsibility. That's neither here nor there.
Okay,
Yeah, I still believe it's.
But regardless, your objection is to the question is in terms of ethics.
It's ethics, and I think there's an insinuation, Your Honor, that somehow the ethics or lack thereof, as she's insinuating.
No, I think there is an ethic.
If I can finish, creates a situation where she's sort of venturing into possible entrapment, and I just think this line of questioning is not relevant to ultimately whether or not Ms. Elise and other people at the Phoenix Gas Level engaged in acts of prostitution and thereby engaged in enterprise.
Okay. I was told by my first attorney and my second attorney that entrapment is not, it's an affirmative defense, and I cannot use it unless I'm guilty or something. So I have abandoned entrapment at any point. For a couple of years ago,
And I understand
abandoned
that.
that. Okay, so I'm not trying to lead to that. I was perplexed as a citizen to find out that there is a bedrock of ethics, that it's okay to act like a criminal to catch a criminal, and that's all I was trying to get to.
Well, the question is whether or not it's ethical, it's not relevant, whether or not it's legal. If you want to ask her opinion, I think it does go to her credibility in terms of the actions that she took and her understanding about the legality of what she was doing. If you want to inquire about that,
Being undercover, okay.
but not the ethics.
True.
So, as an undercover decoy, and the gentleman that worked with you in Vice, it is legal and actually protocol to pretend to be someone else in the investigation.
Yes, when you work in an undercover detail.
Yes. And that involves, to some extent, pretending to be part of that group that you're investigating.
Yes.
And when you come across the culture, the subculture of this group that you're now going to infiltrate, to what extent do you understand what they're up to that you can play the part? How much time do you spend preparing to know the role before you go in?
Varies dramatically depending on whether or not you're going into that role as somebody who should know what they're doing or somebody who's going in there as kind of a naive, I don't really know what I'm getting myself into, this is kind of my first time. Obviously, if you're trying to assimilate with a group of people and you are supposed to be coming from that world, you have to do a tremendous amount of research and know the terminology, know the mannerisms to be able to portray yourself as an individual that you're not.
So at the Phoenix God Temple, here's this pink website, looks pretty churchy. And the overall, our screening process is to keep out men who don't want to honor women. That's really what our screening process is about. Men who call up and want, this or that from the woman, full service, whatever. We can't deal with that because that's not a man.
Is there a question here?
So, the general premise about the Phoenix Goddess Temple is the men that go there want to be led by a wise woman. Did your detectives ever understand the concept that the Phoenix Goddess Temple has as its primary premise, that men want to be led and taught by women? Did any of your detectives actually assimilate that information about men humbly going to a woman?
I believe the detectives just kind of took a quick look at the website, but as far as gleaning from the website exactly what you just said, I don't know that that translation was made to them, and certainly the way they behaved during those undercover deals was that of an individual that doesn't have that background or experience or training related to Tantra or anything else.
So your officers enter the temple the same way that guests and members enter, using the secret intake form which we looked at.
Yes.
So, is it your testimony today that the primary statement in all of the temple's materials is that women should be in charge of sex and men should humbly ask for pay help with that? It's all over the website and all of our training materials. So, is it your testimony that this ethic of men humbly going to a woman did not reach your detectives? They didn't understand.
You would have to ask them that question. There was no discussion during our preparation for them to go in about anything involving humbly or ethics, or, I mean, that wasn't any part of our discussion. It was, standard safety protocol, that kind of thing. We didn't discuss sexual intercourse.
What does it mean though when a woman on the phone, if you were a decoy and you say, and the guy goes, "Are you full service?" What would you say? He's calling up paid and his words are $300 an hour. Is that full service? What would you say?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then he says, "Could you tell me what is the running definition that you use? Just sexual intercourse." What about the word service? Doesn't it kind of imply that the woman will do what he asks? Isn't that in there somewhere? Full service means, yes, I give you this much money, and yes, I'll do whatever you ask. Is that what full service is?
Full service, the way we use it is simply sexual intercourse. Oftentimes men ask for more than that once they're there, but full service.
What's more than intercourse? I don't even know.
There's a lot more.
So full service is not necessarily that the woman will be in service in your mind.
Correct.
But do you think that the men, when they say, "Is it full service?" are they kind of saying, "Will you do whatever I ask for this money?"
Yes.
Thank you. When you open an investigation on massage parlor, escort agency, anything, and you've done this for how many years? 13 years in Vice? No, not 13.
I've been in Vice for 5 years.
And with the liquor board is 13. No, community action. Okay. So whenever the liquor board, the vice department, somebody in the police department, there's a target. You targeted them. You decided, hey, these people are bad. What percentage of the time when you target someone and you go through discovery, do you actually say, let's not do this? What percentage of the cases do you target and then will turn back? In criminal enterprise. Let's focus just on group activity. When you target a group, how frequently in your experience, during the undercover process or the discovery that comes later, do you decide to drop it?
I believe you asked me this question a couple days ago, and I could not give you a specific percentage because we don't have.
Okay, how about this? Let's use some words that are kind of generic. Could you say, I've never seen it, I've seen it a few times, yes, it happens regularly?
Yes, it happens regularly.
It does. So in 2015, for example, how many of your cases that you targeted did you drop after you opened it on group activity? You actually dropped investigations on groups. A dozen times?
No, we don't get assigned cases. We don't have like huge caseloads of organized, like illegal enterprise cases. We're generally only working in a given year. Each detective could be working 2 to 4 of them in a given year.
So 2 to 4 in a given year of criminal enterprise, like the Phoenix Dog Circle, 2 to 4 in a year, and of that 2 to 4, you maybe end up dropping half. Would you agree?
It could be a third.
Really, 2 out of 3 proceed, and 1 out of 3 you drop.
Yeah, you asked me for 2015, and I'm going through my active cases or the cases I've had this year, and
Well, it's much better to get an overgeneral picture, but I just said that's how I
yeah, it is difficult, and every detective is different. Certain detectives are very good at, one type of an investigation, so the supervisors tend to lean on those detectives and provide them with those cases because they have a familiarity with them. So not all detectives are getting, big illegal enterprise cases. Some get more than others.
What does the term exculpatory evidence mean? Exculpatory evidence.
Means making available all the evidence in a case.
There's an actual definition. Exculpatory evidence is evidence that clears the person of their charge or would tend to. So you're not familiar with the phrase exculpatory evidence, evidence that would clear the defendant.
I'm familiar with the term exculpatory evidence. I don't know the exact legal definition that it seems like you're wanting from me.
That's okay. The concept of exculpatory evidence is in your mind.
Yes.
There could be evidence laying around that might
Yes, which is
free this person from the charges.
which is why it's important that if we do search warrants that the evidence is given, whether it's something that's going to help our case or hurt our case.
Right. How many man hours did you personally spend in the discovery after you rated and gathered all
The computer-related evidence, probably a total of about 2 weeks.
And I was told, and during that investigation of the church's information, including the Aquabah paperwork, the charter that I had from the Light Body Temple, the charter from the Great Goddess, all that churchy stuff that was on the walls in the office. They're over here. You see the evidence of a church. You see the trappings of a church. You see a deep, tall, and wide, out and proud church. Did you give any thought to, wow, did we miss something here on motive and intention? Did you ever question that you might have, when you saw the actual structure of the church, did you ever think, wow, this is weird? This seems to be a real church.
After looking at all of the electronic computer-related evidence, it was clear to us that this was, again, much different than any investigation that we had before it, but also that it was like a hybrid church/business.
So let's stop right there.
Okay.
So the part that you say is business is the private ceremonies between a practitioner and a seeker, a practitioner and an initiate. Those ceremonies are what you call business.
For money, yes, correct.
For money. Did you find any records while you were looking after you got the records? Did you ever find any evidence that people had visited the temple and not left any money?
Yes.
And did you find any protocols as you were going through the stuff about what happens to people who come to the temple, receive the healing or assembly, and then don't make a donation or don't make a request enough? Did you find any blacklists where people weren't allowed to?
Not a blacklist per se, but
Okay, let's stop right there. Well, I'm sorry. How important is it for you to understand the psychology of the person that you're playing when you're undercover? Do you understand the psychology of an escort? Did you kind of get into the psychology of what makes an escort so that you can portray it?
I don't know if I've thought about a psychology, certainly a role. I consider myself, while working undercover, like an actress, getting into a role.
Excellent. And is that actress, because you said this work is your life's calling, you could move, I'm doing this as an actress from a soul level and making a better place, making the world a better place with my work. Do you feel that way?
I do feel that way.
Okay, great. So, did it ever cross your mind that the people at the temple might, at a deep soul level, be authentically believing that their ceremonies were making the world a better place? Is that possible?
That is possible.
Did you hear that from anybody where they thought they were making the world a better place?
I've heard that from you several times.
Have you heard anything from the other people that they thought they were in service to their community?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, thank you. So it's your testimony today that the vice detectives, the male vice detectives that went in undercover, did not understand or even that the element of males worshiping females was never discussed in their meetings. I'm sure they had multiple meetings. Did it ever come up in any conversation with any of the detectives? Hey, these people seem to be wanting men that want to worship women and uplift women. Did you guys ever talk about that?
We did not.
The word detective has within it the word detect, which is basically observe, detect.
Sure. Yes.
The definition of detect.
No, I think that's fine.
That's right. Looking for the details. Okay. So it's confusing for me. Did you ever watch any of the teaching videos that were discovered? There was hundreds of hours of teaching videos. Did you guys ever see those?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Do you remember the class where I taught theory of practice that everyone was required to take? Do
I saw so many videos. I probably saw it, but I don't know specifically the exact video you're referring to. I watched a lot of videos.
So the foundations of right livelihood, the 30-hour block that everyone was required to take, and the magnetic touch tonker, which was a 2.5-day intensive, you didn't examine those class materials, those videos.
I didn't say I didn't examine them. I did watch those. I watched numerous videos, but I don't know specifically what video I watched was the theory of practice versus another. Honestly, I felt like a lot of it was over my head. Maybe it's just my own not having any background or understanding. As somebody with no background and understanding, just the use of many terms and words I wasn't familiar with, it was just, it was a little overwhelming trying to understand what does this mean, what is she specifically saying, because I don't have that background or understanding.
That makes sense, actually, and with your testimony that you don't really have a definition for the word sacred, you don't really use it in your professional life, is it possible that all that complexity would actually mean something if the person was trying to pursue sacred? Like if our people were trying to pursue sacred, and then you say, I don't use that, is it possible there's like a gap there?
I believe that the people that were using the words have an understanding of the meanings of those words and could certainly use those words. I just was lost in a lot of the translation.
Randy, I think we're going to need some paper towel. Let's wait just a moment.
I'm going to go back to, I'm just astonished because I think that a detective would be so concerned with motive, intent, and circumstance, and physical objects at the scene. And yet when I look at the summations written by the detectives, hear your testimony, I hear this, it's like a black hole in the investigation to me, where how important was the consideration of motive in the building? How much weight did you give to motive in the building?
Very little.
Okay. How much weight did you give to intention? What people thought they would do?
It was something that was discussed.
Okay. And how much weight did you give to the physical objects at the scene, which evidence alters the 14 chakra ladder of lights? That's evidence at the scene, which was not written into the police reports, by the way. Is that correct? None of the religious iconography was written into any of the detective reports. Correct?
That's correct.
Because it was considered irrelevant.
That's correct.
Okay. So in that theory of practice video that you probably watched, and this is a speech I've given dozens of times, I say to the people coming in, they're going to ask me, is this legal, is this not legal? I first address the Constitution, and then I say this.
Gunnar, is there a question?
Sustain.
Or is-
I'm getting to it because she said she saw the tape. So the metaphor, the analogy that I use over and over again, and I can bring this out with witness interviews, is that when it comes to the law, if I shoot someone to take their wallet, or I shoot someone to stop them from shooting at the schoolhouse, that the law may grab me for pulling that trigger, but that ultimately they will look at the totality of circumstance, and I will not be called a murderer. That's actually the thing that I've said to my class. Can you tell me, please, detective, how did that not apply in this situation? Because that's actually what I taught.
What you're
How does
What you're referring to is, again, back to culpable mental states and the requirements under each of those statutes related to whether or not somebody is charged for first-degree homicide, second-degree, negligent, reckless, whatever. In this case, we're operating under knowingly. to establish whether or not there's prostitution occurring. And you're comparing apples to oranges. And
You're right, because it isn't murder. This is a victimless crime of consenting adults, correct? It's a victimless crime of consenting adults.
I don't believe that.
You believe the victims are the practitioners themselves. That's your testimony.
I do.
Okay, thank you. Let's do some quick yes and no. When does a detective sent there to detect details decide that a pattern of objects present at the crime scene is not worth writing down? Because there was patterns of things, altars everywhere, these big symbols. And yet none of the detectives wrote this up on their reports, their crime scene reports. So I need to understand what's in the mindset of a detective when he comes across something he's never seen before and he chooses not to write it in the report. What was he thinking?
You would have to ask those detectives. I'm sorry, I can't speak for them.
How about you in your reports leading this investigation? How did you as a detective sent to detect the details of the crime? Just decide to leave motive, physical objects out. Let's talk about physical objects. You chose not to write up in any of the written documents the presence of altars or the ladder of light. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. And so, is it in your experience, because I know you're not a lawyer, but in your experience, when people are accused of a crime and they're sitting there with their defender, they're going to be looking at the police reports. They're not going to see crime scene photos.
I'm sorry, at what stage are you referring to? At initial charging?
In my experience with this case, when I looked at all of the reports written by all of the detectives, there was no mention made of the altars to another and writing throughout the bill, and that's correct.
Correct.
And no one wrote down the 14 5-foot-tall symbols of the ladder of light, which offers.
I believe Detective Gilbreth actually referred to that.
What about, this is weird. What about, we had 8 bathrooms and 4 of them had little baskets with cobalt, isis blue, little jars with little hinges in. And 4 of the 8 bathrooms had moon jars for the women to collect their menstrual blood together in ceremony. Have you ever seen anything like that?
I have not.
And what about the refrigerator in the dressing room? The little miniature refrigerator that had nothing in it but little blue jars of women's menstrual blood being saved for ceremonial cleaning. Ever seen anything like that?
I have never seen anything like that.
How is that not written up? Isn't blood a biohazard? Can you do it?
All of the stuff that you're referring to was photographed, which is customary during a search warrant.
And what did you do when you saw that? It's jars of blood. Isn't it a biohazard? Why wasn't it written down? This is a biohazard. There's jars of blood.
It's not a biohazard to us if we're taking a photograph of it, shutting the refrigerator, and leaving the location.
Okay. But those weren't written in the detective. They weren't written in the reports. They were just photographed.
Yeah, detectives weren't aware of those jars until the day of the search warrant. Right.
You know, I keep seeing that there's a whole bunch of more evidence that became available to the detective after the raid and the discovery. And all of this stuff not looking like anything you've ever seen before, you felt very comfortable proceeding with the prosecution.
Yes, I did, based on.
Which is why we're here today.
Yes.
Is there any mechanism in your job where you can go to someone hired and say, oh, this is so strange, I've never seen anything like this before? Is there a mechanism to discuss anomalies?
Certainly, I can do that every day.
Who are the people you discuss this
I believe he's my supervisor, Sergeant Sutherland, and lieutenants at the time was Lieutenant Gallagher. And then we discuss it amongst ourselves.
And is the decision-making authority to treat it differently, not in your realm, but actually above you with Sutherland and Gallagher? They would have had to make the call to treat it differently. But was that your call?
We all talk together, but I think the part that's missing is that it doesn't matter if it's a church or a business. It's a matter of investigating criminal activity in the location, regardless of whether or not it looks different and it is a church, or whether it looks a certain way that we're accustomed to and it's a brothel.
So is it even possible in your mind that these are religious ceremonies for us, but because you don't know what sacred is, you can't see them as religious ceremonies? Is that possible? Because you don't have sacred vocabulary, you couldn't see this as authentic religious practice. You aren't equipped to see it as authentic religious practice because you don't have a definition for sacred professionally.
Yeah, I was going to say I do have a definition for sacred, but professionally it's not a term we use. Regarding your question about did I see it, could I see it, or was I remiss in seeing it? I believe it was potentially sacred to.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. You may finish your response.
I'm done.
Did you or anyone in the Vice unit spend any time looking at or analyzing the 4 points crime scene photography accurately?
Yes.
Okay. And when you saw the altars of light, the grand altars, was there any discussion of the pilgrims coming and going that slept in those beds every night?
Just to make clear, so everybody understands, the grand altar is the bed, and the altar of light you're referring to is a smaller table, massage table covered. Okay, I just want to make it clear what we're talking about.
Well, let me rephrase the question. You saw what you labeled as beds in the transformation chambers.
Yes.
Okay. And they were labeled as beds in your reports.
Yes.
Were you aware that the Phoenix Goddess Temple was a pilgrimage site and that nearly every night pilgrims stayed in those rooms from all over the world, all over the country, all over the world? Were you aware that pilgrims were sleeping in those rooms every night?
I was aware that people were sleeping in those rooms. I was not aware that they were called pilgrims.
Well, depending on how long they stayed. Some were students and residents. Okay. So, but you could acknowledge that you weren't aware that the beds were used for sleeping every night?
I was aware of that.
Oh, okay. Was there any kind of exit meeting? Did you have a final meeting where you're like, okay, done, sealed, I'm done with this, I've moved on? Did you have like in corporate life, they call it an exit interview, but like where you all sit together and you've done what you're going to do, and now you're just waiting it to play out? Did you have an actual round table, a meeting, any kind of coming together and discussing the entire Operation Phoenix Goddess? Was there any kind of exit interview?
There was not.
Okay. So you never got together and talked about everything you saw, all the stuff at the scene, everything that came out of the church's computers. You never went back and sort of did like a recap together.
We did not, because we were looking at stuff over the course of years after the search warrants were served. It wasn't something that day one after the search warrants were served, it's done, we're ready to move on. That's not the way it works based on the amount of evidence involved.
How many police officer hours legally were invested in the raid on the Phoenix Goddess Temple to take down this? I mean, how many man hours? Is it in the hundreds or the thousands?
It was probably in the hundreds based on the number of locations and how many people were at each location.
And who prioritized this over other types of crimes? Other types of, who said this was a priority to spend this
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm sorry.
Sustained.
So you feel that this was a good allocation of police resources to take down the spiritual community? Was that the best use of police resources?
Certainly, our number one priority is investigating child prostitution cases, so that is first priority, but that doesn't happen every day. So I believe it was a good use of police resources, yes.
Even though it removed from the community all these programs. It didn't cost money, you could give what you needed. The whole thing was give what you could. You feel that that was a good use of taxpayer money to take out a community resource that was designed to teach women, teach men, and uplift women. That was a good use of resources in your mind.
I do, but we did not try to stop any of that teaching stuff that you're referring to by arresting the practitioners. That was your organization's decision to stop those other programs. That wasn't our decision.
Please, no more commentary.
Yes, sustained. Ask questions, don't make comments on the responses.
You and someone on your team, you or someone on your team, presented as evidence that I was part of a similar temple in Seattle prior to my moving to Arizona. Do you know anything about that?
I know about your involvement, but I was not the individual that presented any information regarding that.
Okay, so you were not the one who called up Seattle and said, send us everything you got on Tracy Lewis. You weren't that person.
You know what, I actually was. I thought you were referring to grand jury testimony or something. But yeah, I believe I reached out to Seattle.
Right. And so I was at a bond reduction hearing where I was in for $1 million bond.
Sustained.
Judge, can we approach?
Yes.
At this point,
Hold on. Okay.
Miss Elise and Mr. Wade's inability to abide by the court's orders is getting to the point where it's ridiculous, and the state cannot get a fair trial. She cannot stop commenting, and it's getting absurd.
Everything I'm saying is true.
Spirit is live.
Okay. I'm gonna,
You're not involved in
hold on.
this, please.
Hold on. I'm going to send the jury out.
I'll stick to my script, Your Honor. I'll keep sticking to my script.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take the noon recess. Please return at 1:25. Please remember the admonition.
Okay.
The record will show the jury has left the courtroom. You may step down, Detective. All right, Ms. Elise. I understand it is difficult for you to do what you are doing in terms of representing yourself. That's why most people don't do it. It is difficult to separate your emotions and do the job you must do if you're going to represent yourself. We have all been very patient, making numerous allowances for you. You have been asked repeatedly not to comment and to ask questions. It is clear that you cannot do that. No, not yet. The state has a right to a fair trial just as you do. My job is to ensure that both of you get a fair trial. You are making it impossible for me to do my job because you aren't following my orders. Which leaves me with a very simple solution of revoking your right to represent yourself and having Mr. Green represent you. That's where we're headed, in very short order. That is the only recourse I have if you can't follow the rules that I give you. They're not complicated rules. No, not yet. Now, yesterday, all right, and with regard to that, I understand you're studying, but the rules are simple. It's not that complicated to understand that when someone gives you a response, you don't comment about it. You don't say, well, that's not what happened at all. You don't do that. That's not your job. And you've been repeatedly told that. There have been numerous objections. I've sustained them all. We've had comments here at the bench. We've discussed it during the breaks, and you still continue to comment. It is not permitted. Now, what would you do if the state did that? You would be up here asking for a new trial, which is what they are very close to doing, I have no doubt. Because they have a right to a fair trial just as you do. You are taking, excuse me, you are taking that away. Yes, and we'll have to start over. And we'll start over if need be. Now, your son is here at council table as your investigator. I've allowed that to happen. Yesterday, I asked you at one of the bench conferences to have him sit down and to stop standing and talking to you in your ear. I mentioned it again yesterday. Today, right before we took this break, he threw his arms in the air and made a comment. And he has made several comments, and he keeps moving over and talking to Mr. Green in a very loud fashion. It is disruptive. It is not allowed. I understand he's your son. I understand he's emotional. But it isn't allowed. If he was a paid employee, I would report him to his supervisor and ask that he be removed. And I'm this close to doing that. So here's what I'm going to say to you. We're going to take the noon recess. I want everybody to cool off. I'm going to give you another chance to come back in here and continue to represent yourself. But if this continues to happen and you don't follow the rules, I don't expect you to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. I understand that. But you're making the same one over and over and over. And it's almost as if it is intentional. To me, it appears to be intentional. And I can't allow that to happen. So, your son may sit there, he may write you notes, which is what I told him yesterday, but he cannot gesture. He is not to move over and talk to Mr. Green. Mr. Green is not his advisory council. So he is not to do that. Excuse me, sir, please sit down. All right. And you don't have a right to say anything. Investigators don't participate. You're not a lawyer. You can't address the court. If you want to talk to your mother, that would be fine. But what I want to say to you, sir, is if you want to stay, you need to stay seated. You may write your mother notes, but you may not participate, gesture, make any kind of indication if you like or don't like the testimony you're hearing. And if you can't do that, then I'm going to have to remove you from the courtroom. I don't want to do that. But you're leaving me no option. Okay? So, Miss Elise, I want you to take the lunch hour. I want you to go. I want you to collect yourself and decide if you want to continue to represent yourself or if you want Mr. Green to take over your representation.
Yes. And Your Honor, what happened, if I just may explain my mindset so that you both can kind of be in on it. In the little bit of time that I have to do research every night, I am watching and studying, and it was my understanding from the videos I watched on YouTube, it's a terrible thing, but it's all I got, that cross-examination is the attorney's moment to give testimony by making statements and then allowing the witness to say yes or no. I never perceived it to be that, but I was studying it, so I was attempting to do what I saw, which is make a statement, try to get yes or no. And the part where I'm reacting, that is absolutely, I am deeply apologizing for that. And I will give it because I know I can't do that right now. I'm going to have to actually retrain my brain. What I can do
Sir, it's very important that you not talk.
Not at all.
Not at all. You can talk with your mother. You're there to assist her.
As a live natural, the spirit does move through me. And so when she said, I'm sorry, when he said I objected, she said, oh, I'm sorry. My reaction is, no, that's a good thing. Don't apologize for making me mistake.
Okay, well, the rules of the courtroom, there are rules of the courtroom, and they don't allow you to react or to respond to what you hear. And if you can't do that, then you can't be here, okay? I understand that may be difficult for you, but that's what we all have to do. All right? All right. So, Ms. Elise, you told us that you would be finished by noon today. Does the state have some witnesses that you want to bring in this afternoon, or do you want her to finish? We'll take your witnesses out of order.
We have one witness coming this afternoon, Judge, so he'll be here ready at 1:30. I mean, it depends on how much more she has. So.
How much more do you think you have, Ms. Elise? I think that's correct. Yeah. But I can't give you legal advice. That's what Mr. Green is. He's here to answer your questions. But it's up to you to decide your strategy. All I can do is rule in objections.
Okay. I would like to have another half hour, just because I had some that I thought were pretty important going into this.
All right, so you may have 1/2 hour, and then we'll give you your 15 minutes and redirect, and then you can call your witness.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, we're adjourned for lunch. 1:30.
Judge, can I just put one? I don't have anything to add to what the court said. I just want to put one thing on the record because I don't
Yes,
know
you
if it
may.
was clear.
You may.
Right before we took a break, Ms. Elise made a comment about being in on a $1 million bond, which was obviously inappropriate. We objected and the court sustained it. And that's when Mr. Wade threw up his fist and yelled, "Good job," loud enough for the jury to hear. I don't know if the record caught it, so I wanted to make it clear for the record that's what happened.
All right. Sir, I don't know how many times I have to tell you, you cannot speak in the courtroom. You are not an attorney, and you're not here representing yourself, so I cannot hear from you.
Yes.
All right. All right, the record will show the presence of the defendant and all counsel. The jury is not present. Does anyone want to say anything? Ms. Elise? Anyone from the state before we start? I just wanted to be very clear. Everyone needs to follow the rules. That's simple. Follow the rules.
I was trying to get to the fact that there was this huge accusation made in public and in court about me having a place in Seattle where I got ran out and arrested when I was ran out of town. Of course, it wasn't true, and I was trying to bring that out to the jury that there was this large thing that was brought in against me. And I didn't know that I really truly didn't know that the bonding section had anything to do with what's considered punishment and sentence. I knew I wasn't supposed to say anything about that. And the part about the $1 million, they had brought it up with the jury during the Florida fire about, do you think you hold it against someone? Would you hold it against the state if you thought there were millions of dollars? So because they had said it, I was sort of weaving it back in. But I will definitely leave that out. It's not proper, and I will stick to no reactions.
Okay. And Mr. Wade, do you understand? You're to sit quietly, take notes, and not respond to the evidence. All right. And if you don't, Randy's going to come over and ask you to leave.
My response was to emotional reaction of her apologizing, and I feel like she's not apologizing. My saying is, you want them to object as much as possible, without not being none or the jury.
Okay. Well, you are here to assist. You are not an attorney. It's up to your mother, Ms. Elise, to present her case and not through you.
I was refraining from physical actions, emotional support.
All right. Thank you. And you understand that if you don't, what's going to happen is that Randy is going to ask you to leave the courtroom. Okay? Because I sometimes don't see what's going on over there. I'm focused on other things. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right, let's bring in the jury.
All rise for the jury.
Yeah. Yes. All right.
Be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and counsel. Ms. Elise, you may continue with cross-examination. Good.
Okay. I think I'm going to seat too, so maybe I'll be a little. And this is going to be a mismatch of my unasked questions. Sorry if they don't necessarily connect. So it's your testimony that you've never raided a church or temple before.
That's correct.
Okay. And the doors of the temples and schools in Sedona and Phoenix were open to the public with published hours open to the public, and the raids were conducted during open hours. Could you explain the use of a battering ram when the doors are unlocked and it's open to the public? What would the philosophy be about bringing a battering ram and using a battering ram when the doors are open?
As I previously mentioned, I am not trained in the use of those tools and equipment, and I would defer those questions to the individuals that executed the search warrants or to the supervisors who made that decision.
Okay, thank you for that. Did you see the course called Foundations of Right Livelihood when you did the discovery?
I recall seeing that on the School of One's website, I believe.
Okay. That was a 30-hour course that all the practitioners were required to move through. Did you hear that from any of them?
I don't recall that being one of the courses listed on the paperwork that was given to me during my meetings inside the temple. I remember theory of practice and whole body healing being on that list.
Yeah, those are two components of a 6-course block. So you saw a little bit of, maybe not the whole Foundations in Right Livelihood course.
That's correct. I don't recall that description.
Okay. Have you ever heard the term right livelihood?
I've seen that on your website, but not aside from that.
Do you have any notion about what it means?
I don't. It would be a guess.
I'd love to hear your guess.
Just based on the pure words, I would imagine it being living as like an authentic self or as you believe to live.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That's
That's very
yes.
close, and we'll, thank you very much, yes. Now, since vice and prostitution and human trafficking is one of your main functions at work, I'm wondering if you've ever heard of the Arizona precedent in Arizona law that was set that outlined the 3 harms of prostitution as far as the state of Arizona goes. There's actually 3 prongs listed in statute as these are the harms. This is why we go after prostitutes. Are you familiar with that sort of obscure statute?
I am not.
Okay. I'm going to just briefly mention those and ask you if you found those harms at Temple. And we did this in our pretrial interviews. Okay. So the first reason listed on this Arizona statute precedent, it was set in precedent in court, was that Arizona prosecutes prostitutes to stop the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. That was item 1. And did you have any complaints or any evidence of anyone at the Phoenix Goddess Temple spreading sexually transmitted disease?
Objection, relevance in this state's the law, Jeff.
Sustained. Approach, please.
If I may, Your Honor, Ms. Elise is confusing the compelling interest in the legislation of the legislators making a law with a duty of the police department or law enforcement agency, and in doing so, again, is creating a confusion for the jury.
Oh, Your Honor, I submitted the actual reference, the legal point of authority in writing in my last submission, and it is an actual precedent in Somebody versus Somebody, and in that case, the judge determined that the state of Arizona has 3 reasons why they prosecute prostitutes. If she has no knowledge of that, I can accept that, but I thought it would be acceptable to, which I have already done in pretrial interviews, just ask her if she found STDs, coercion, and trafficking, or cluster crimes, and I'd be done with it.
You may ask those questions, but not in the format you asked them, because what your premise was incorrect.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So going back to, did you have any reports or find any evidence of anything at the Phoenix Goddess Temple or Sedona Temple where there was a spread of STDs?
I did not.
Okay. And then, just to be clear, you did not find human trafficking at the Phoenix Goddess Temple?
I did not.
And I'll leave that there. And then there's something called cluster crimes, where one crime is usually, you might find another one, like if there's guns, there might be violence. If there's drugs, there might be illegal money or something. That crimes tend to cluster. Did you find any cluster crimes? Illegal weapons, drugs, violence towards parties of one to another. Did you find any cluster crimes at the temples in Arizona?
Yes, there was drug possession.
And what did you find?
Subject to the arrest, the day of the arrest, there was
Yeah.
marijuana.
Okay. And how many people were found with marijuana in their possession?
Recalling from memory, I believe it was 2.
Okay. And did those people not possess Native American cards?
I don't know if those individuals had cards. I know one of them did. I don't know about the other person.
Well, actually, they both would have.
Objection, Your Honor, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. I'm sorry. There was no one selling drugs at the Phoenix Goddess Temple.
That's correct, to my understanding.
And you didn't find any heroin, crystal meth, pill popping kind of drug, and amphetamines. You didn't find any.
I don't believe so.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And there were no minors
There were not.
improperly present. No one was there against their will.
I don't believe anybody was there against their will.
Oh, okay. And no guns registered or otherwise?
Correct.
Okay. And you didn't have any evidence of physical violence of people against each other in the building?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So is it your testimony today, before I ask that question, how you've spoken of massage parlors and you've spoken of escort agencies, but I'm actually accused of being a brothel owner, which is sort of neither of those things. Is that true? I'm accused of, isn't the Phoenix Goddess Temple accused of being a brothel, sort of?
We don't refer to it as a brothel, just an illegal enterprise.
Okay. But the specifics of it would be house of prostitution.
Correct.
As the illegal enterprise. So, sexual conduct for a fee arrangement or exchange of anything of value is the law that we're working with here, essentially. The definition of prostitution that we're all working with, all of us together, is prostitution is sexual conduct for a fee arrangement or exchange of anything of value. Did I state that pretty correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So, is it possible in your mind that the women and men of the temple were receiving donations to support the space and the ceremonies, but that the decision to have any kind of sexual anything happen would not be made until the moment that they were in it, that they would never prearrange to do a sexual act in advance? Is that plausible to you?
Yes.
That people wouldn't decide till they were in that moment whether or not they would agree to have a sexual experience?
Yes, that's plausible.
Okay. Did you hear that philosophy coming from many of the temple people?
That going into the sessions, they did not have an idea in their head specifically about what sexual conduct they may or may not have?
Or whether they would even do sexual conduct, that they would decide when they were in it?
Yes, that's
I
what.
did hear that. Okay, thank you. So you gave testimony that if a decoy, you're being a decoy and there's a potential John, which we talked about the seekers, the temple members were, in the eyes of the state, Johns, and that when a John calls and says, "Can I do this with you?" or "Will you do this for me?" and they speak of a specific sex act, even if it's coded, and then you say, "I'll decide when you get here if I will or I won't," and then you said, that wouldn't work very good to get the Johns in. If you said, "There's no guarantee over the phone." Wasn't that the testimony that you gave a couple times?
Yes, not exactly exactly what you just said, but yes, on many occasions, the buyer or the John will call and ask for specific sex acts. When I'm working as a decoy, I generally will tell them yes or no because I want them to show up.
And if you said, "Maybe I will, maybe I won't," you said most of those guys would not come in.
If you told them that, they probably would not come, correct?
Oh, okay, thank you. Did you notice that the temple does not, in the sex industry, there's something called screening the client. Could you speak to us what screening the client is in the sex industry when you screen someone before you see them? How does that work?
As I've previously mentioned, screening a client is something that's commonplace in this industry in that they're screening for law enforcement. So there'll be checks in place, meaning on a first call, they won't provide a specific location. They won't discuss sex and money over the telephone because essentially discussing sex and money or any sexual act and money over the telephone is a prostitution deal, so there's not discussion of that during a phone conversation. And then upon arrival, many times the screening process involves disrobing. Actually, some of the women grab the male's hands, place them on their breasts, or grab their genitals as a way of checking for law enforcement.
Wow, okay. Did you observe any screening processes at the Phoenix Goddess Temple? Were we screening for law enforcement, Detective Campbell?
I believe there was screening for law enforcement during the initial gatekeeper phone conversation, only screening to ensure, I guess I should rephrase that, not necessarily screening for law enforcement, but to be screening to ensure that there was no discussion of sexual acts in the chambers. So setting the stage so that there would not be that sex and money conversation in the chambers. The screening was done on the telephone, but not necessarily for law enforcement, actually to ensure there was no, the impression was that they would not be breaking the law if they were talking about the sex act on the phone and instructing the individuals not to discuss it in the actual chambers.
So if there was never discussion of money and never discussion of any sex act, is that prostitution? If there's no discussion of money and no discussion of a sex act?
That is the case. If there's no discussion of money and no discussion of sex acts, then that wouldn't be prostitution.
Okay. And again, I'll speak to my own case. The detectives came in, and it's my policy not to discuss money. It's throughout the temple that's our policy. And yet the detectives began to keep thrusting the money. Again, which is what our members do not do. So when you go in to do an undercover and someone's not talking about money and sex, is that part of your job then to sort of introduce that if they're not talking about it?
Certainly, to determine compliance with the law, undercover detectives will ask the question related to sex and money. And it's incumbent upon the person in that room to immediately refrain from discussions or to end the contact altogether if they truly are not providing sexual acts for money, sexual acts at all.
Right. I'm wondering if you heard anyone in the numerous interviews that you conducted speak to the effect that to do sex for money is against the goddess because we're not teaching a man how to actually access the goddess herself. That rewarding a man by letting him do it, give money to have something happen, that was against the goddess. Did you hear that from any of the women? That we can't embody the goddess if we reward men for trying to buy sex? Did you hear that from anybody?
I don't believe I heard anything like that, unless I'm misinterpreting what you just said.
Okay.
There was no discussion of embodiment of a goddess
Oh, okay.
to make men wait.
Okay. So, it's your testimony that temple people were not discussing money and not discussing sex to evade the law.
That is my belief, yes.
Okay. But we had an internal rule system which worked for us. It worked for us. So your people came in, signed the seeker form, and then did not follow the rules. Is that fair to say? That your people did not follow the instructions on when you visit the temple? They did talk about money when they were instructed multiple times not to. So they didn't actually follow the temple's instructions.
They did initial the seeker forms, And if that's what you mean by not following the rules, they did acknowledge the seeker forms and initialed them.
Right, and it says right in there to not talk about money and sex, and the gatekeepers also instructed people to not discuss the money in the chambers. Did you hear that from multiple gatekeepers, that you're not to discuss money in the chambers, leave your offering at the end?
I did hear that.
Okay. So you stated that you were in charge of contacting the city of Seattle regarding any involvement I might have had in a temple up in Seattle.
I believe I did. It was myself or Detective Herman, but I'm pretty sure it was me.
Okay. Do you remember what month even that was? Was that like during the investigation, after the temple was raided? Do you remember when you pulled that in from Seattle?
It was prior to the search warrants, which is what you refer to as raided, but I couldn't tell you exactly what month in the process.
When we received it from the city of Phoenix, or excuse me, the city of Seattle Police Department, did you actually look at it and read through it?
Yes, I did.
And did my name appear even once in that Seattle police report regarding the sacred temple?
I don't believe it did.
Okay, thank you. And while we're on that, did you run a criminal background check on Tracy Elise?
Yes, I did.
Did you discover any criminal activity prior to this?
I don't recall there being anything in the criminal history report.
Okay. How about my daughter, Sylvia Jane Wade? Did you run a criminal background check on her?
Yes, we did.
Did you find any criminal activity on my daughter?
I don't believe we did.
Did you guys also observe she graduated magna cum laude? That was in her record? No? Sorry. Did you run a criminal background check on Janet Craven?
Yes.
Did you come up with any criminal background on Janet Craven?
I'm hesitating in answering these questions because I wasn't prepared for these questions, and so I'd hate to give wrong information. It's been years since those what you're referring to as background checks. It's just a criminal history check. And for all the people that you may name off, I can't recall from memory those individuals that had criminal histories and not. So
I was only concerned with what would be called the head trust, the people who were accused of actually running it, which was 4 people.
all I can speak to is I don't remember there being anything significant regarding any kind of criminal history for any of the people that you just mentioned.
That's an awesome. And then just, I'd like to throw in Wayne Clayton because he ran the school. Did you come up with any criminal stuff on Wayne?
Again, I don't know specifics, but nothing of significance that we would have
Traffic
much
ticket or
attention
something,
to.
but not like they've done this before or something.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Did you ever discuss with the Phoenix Police Department or the city of Phoenix, they have I'm guessing there's someone in charge of publicity when you're going to do a takedown of this size, and it's very high profile. Who was involved with the City of Phoenix Police Department in how this is going to be told to the world? Who in your department was in charge of that?
We have public information officers, and it's the responsibility of the supervisors involved, like Sergeant Sutherland or at the time Lieutenant Gallagher, to meet with the public information officer ahead of time to discuss what may or may not be shared with the media.
Okay. How frequently, in your experience, does the prosecutor's office tell the press to be there?
Chris, say.
Approach, please. Objection again.
She was talking about specific statements that she believes were made by people in the media from my office regarding contacting the media. I don't know basis for that. I don't know the relevance of that.
I was going to ask you if there was any discussion with the publicity department about rating a church, if there was any discussion of how they might spin that, or do they need to spin it? Because you don't rate a woman's church every day of the week, and I just wondered if there was any conversations that were had about how to present this or to the press.
Well, she's not going to have any firsthand knowledge because she wasn't there. She just said she wasn't. So unless you can establish that she has some firsthand knowledge, I'm going to sustain.
She told me what I need to know, because those people are actually coming back. Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. All right, almost done here. Is it possible that the detectives going in undercover did not have the mindset, intention of the average person that was coming to the temple? Is it possible they had a different mindset than the person coming to the temple?
I actually think it's quite the opposite. Without having any understanding of the inner workings of the temple, I think they go in as somebody who knows nothing, who comes across an ad on Backpage consistent with the other individuals that may have come across an ad on Backpage.
Right, but the temple declared itself to be spiritual sexuality, which isn't commonly seen on Backpage, correct? Spiritual sexuality is not commonly seen on Backpage. As a percentage of the ads, it's not a very big percent.
Correct.
Yeah. So the undercover detectives, the men going in that took our seeker form, which you shared with us yesterday, and then didn't do the rules of the temple, but pressed ahead doing other things. Is that fair, Detective? That they could just ignore the rules of the establishment? Just not do it?
Do I think it's fair? That's a toss-up. I don't know.
You're right.
We work undercover, so we're constantly, if we didn't stretch the rules or boundaries that somebody had, we wouldn't have the ability to work undercover. So that is kind of what we do.
Stretch the boundaries and when you're undercover. Is it possible that men exist, in your opinion, is it possible that men exist that would follow those rules respectfully not discuss money in the chamber
Yes,
and
it,
leave a donation with the intent of supporting the ministries at the temple?
yes, it is possible.
Okay, thank you, Detective Campbell. Thank you so much, honestly, and I'm done. Thank you.
All right, redirect.
Detective, you have outlined through Ms. Elise's cross-examination some ways in which what you perceived and what you've done in your investigation differed in terms of Phoenix Goddess Temple with escort agencies, with massage agencies, or massage bureaus. Can you talk a little bit about what you saw in the investigation of Phoenix Goddess Temple that mirrored or was very similar to what you have seen in other investigations?
Certainly, the advertisements in the respect that they requested a donation as opposed to talking about, a flat fee. It was referred to as a donation or an offering, I believe. And that's consistent with the other advertisements that we see. The fact that you talk to somebody on the phone who's the screener, or there's the screening process, that's very similar. In that there's specific language about not discussing sexual acts, and also on the phone, not discussing sexual acts for money. That's very consistent.
Let me stop you real quick. In terms of the discussion of money on the phone, is that something, in your experience, looking at other massage parlors or escort, that there is not necessarily a discussion of money because the money is already made clear in terms of what the obligation is from the ad itself?
That's correct.
Now, in some of the questions that Ms. Elise just asked you in terms of the expectation, or specifically the expectation in the chamber, what did you learn, not just from the 5 undercover deals, but what did you learn in talking to the various people who were involved in the temple, both the gatekeepers and actually the practitioners, about expectations between the seekers, the men who came to the temple, and the practitioners, or the women who worked with them?
Through various interviews, many interviews, the expectation was that they would receive, for the most part, not all of them, either because they weren't able to function and actually receive a sexual act, but the majority of those that attended or that came into the temple came in with the belief that they would be receiving some sexual act as a result of their time in temple.
And along with that, the expectation from the printed amount of money that was listed in the back page ad, the expectation would be $204 for that hour in the transformation chamber, or in the session, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In fact, through the course of your investigation, did you not learn that many of the goddesses understood a specific expectation from the people who ran the goddess temple, that they were to give a release, or the man was to be manually masturbated during the session?
Your Honor, I object to the prosecution referring to these practitioners and priests of the Taylor as goddesses.
All right, sustained rephrase.
I never referred to these women as goddesses.
That's all. Sustained rephrase.
Okay. I apologize, practitioners, that there was an expectation from people, specifically Ms. Elise, that there was to be a release for a manual masturbation.
I object, Your Honor. That language doesn't appear.
All right,
I ask Mr. Ryder to please use our language.
overruled. You may complete your question.
Is that your understanding?
Through the course of our investigation, it was made known to us that at a minimum, the expectations were that the practitioners were topless at a minimum, and that a release, meaning an orgasm, ejaculation was to occur.
And this, the information that you received from people like Janet Craven and other people who were
involved in operations. That's where that information came from.
Correct.
And that information corroborated the information you received in the 5 undercover wheels with police officers who met with practitioners, correct?
Correct.
Detective, yesterday, Randy. Detective, there was a line of questioning from Ms. Elise about the Oklahoma Native American Church.
During the course of your investigation, did you learn, what did you learn about the Oklahoma Native American Church and its involvement in this festival?
We've learned that there was a ceremony that occurred in the Phoenix Goddess Temple with members of the Oklahoma Native American Church, and that there was as Ms. Elise spoke about yesterday, there was forgive me, I don't know the exact language, but a charter or a branch, Mother Medicine Wheel branch that was established within the temple here.
Are part of this case. Those charges, the time frame of those charges began in January of 2010 and then stretched to September, early September of 2011. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So,
Yes, approach, please. Okay, what's your objection?
Your Honor, this whole thing went down. And in that case, I'm sorry. The whole thing went down under a different case number, and that case number was only January to September of 2011. They added in a whole nother year after the fact when they did the new case number. And so, and I'm not sure what that time period has to do with what we're questioning Detective Campbell on at this minute.
Time period is that the current indictment is from January 1st, 2010 through September. What happened in the previous indictment is not relevant to these proceedings. What was read to the jury in terms of the indictment included this time range that I'm referencing.
All right. Sustain the objection. You may proceed.
Sustain the objection?
I'm sorry. Overrule the objection. You may proceed.
Okay.
Correct.
Let's talk about this idea of membership cards in the Oklahoma Native American Church. Talk about what you have found in terms of your investigation about the ease of getting those cards.
Yeah, I had questions about how one obtains an Oklahoma Native American card. So I simply went on the Oklahoma Native American Church's website and used an undercover identity and had one shipped to me in a matter of a few days.
That gave you, as you understood it, the same rights that supposedly were garnered to Ms. Elise and the other members of the Phoenix Goddess Temple who paid $100 to get those cards?
There were different levels, $200 if you wanted lifetime membership. It was $20 if you belonged to a tribe, $30, I believe, or $20 if you were military. And my card was $40 because I asked for a one-year card. So I paid $40 through PayPal.
So basically anybody could go on the website, pay the money, and suddenly you're a member of the Oklahoma Native American Church.
Correct.
Second I'm going to show you what's already been shown to you as Exhibit 74. This was the exhibit that Ms. Elise showed you yesterday. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Back of the card, it references person secured with this card has met the standards of sincerity. Did you have to show any sort of standards of sincerity in order to get your card?
No, I did not.
I just got to pay the money, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, this talks about if you're a member of the church that qualifies you to carry or possess sacraments, peyote,
I said it horribly wrong yesterday. I think it's ayahuasca, maybe? I don't know.
I object, there's an analysis, this is a medicine person card, which does allow that person to have it, but a general member does not have the authorization that they're connecting. That's my medicine, elder medicine person card, which gives different responsibilities.
All right.
It wouldn't be the same as the one that has an objection, it's not the same one she would be.
All right, your objection is noted. No speaking objections, just object and ask to approach. You may proceed.
Does anywhere on this card, Miss Elise's card, forget about your card, but Miss Elise's card, does it say that it garners the Phoenix God Temple the ability to engage in acts of prostitution when they're somehow protected by the Native American Church?
No, it does not.
In fact, just a little bit more about the Aqua Native American Church. You have familiarized yourself with the head of the Native American Church, James Mooney, correct?
Yes.
Specifically, he's previously testified in court.
Yes, he has.
You've talked to him, actually, about his involvement with Phoenix God's Temple as well, is that right?
Yes, I have.
Okay. As far as what he, the head of the Aqua Native American Church, knew about what was going on at the Phoenix Goddess Temple, specifically in the transformation chambers, what did you learn?
He indicated that he never took part in any of the sessions in the transformation chambers and did not know what occurred in those sessions.
As far as you're concerned, as the case agent and chief investigating officer, this Aqua Native American Church has absolutely nothing to do with your investigation of Phoenix Goddess Temple, is that correct?
That's correct.
Detective, you've talked about when the Special Assignments Unit, as a SWAT team, went to the Phoenix Goddess Temple. It's a large building, and that sort of helps explain why the SWAT team will be used. Is that right?
That's correct.
Beyond the fact that it's a large building, in your investigation, specifically the surveillance of who went in and out of that front door, what did you or other detectives witness about who was going in and out of the temple?
Aside from the practitioners that we previously identified as practitioners working in the temple, it was predominantly unknown males that were entering the doors of the temple.
Does the fact that there were numerous unknown males who were going in on a day-to-day basis, does that, as far as you understand, affect the decisions made to use the special assignments of the SWAT? And if so, why?
It's my understanding that the SWAT team, the SAU, our SAU team was used based on the size of the building, but certainly anytime you have unknown individuals with unknown criminal histories, that certainly is a factor in that decision. But again, that decision was something made between the Special Assignment Unit and my supervisor. I was not involved in that.
Now, Ms. Elise has made mention of the fact that in massage parlor investigations or escort bureau investigations, there is an attempt to, well, the founders or the people who run it kind of stay in the shadows. Is that right? Is that accurate?
That's what she indicated.
Okay. In your experience, I mean, are the people who've got what seems by all accounts a legitimate massage parlor but acts of prostitution are going on, will they use their real name as a part of their business?
Yes, some of those businesses are actually, registered with the Corporation Commission as legitimate fronts for legitimate businesses with the true names of themselves along with other managing partners, members.
Similarly, you've come across in your investigations escort agencies that actually have websites or are out there as escort agencies. In fact, in newspapers or magazines, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. It's not the fact that they are out there in a magazine or a newspaper putting themselves out there. It's what's going on sort of in the shadows or behind the scenes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Ms. Elise has spoken at length about the fact that the Vice Squad targeted and the Phoenix Goddess Temple or various other times you targeted businesses. Is that really what's going on here? Or explain, when you get a complaint, how you operate?
We don't target any business. We operate with complaints when it comes to these kind of establishments, and the investigation has many different facets, as this one did, where you do a lot of internet research, a lot of uncovering who's involved, searching out through Google, through various websites of the inner workings of the organization, and then begin setting up surveillance, also setting up undercover deals with various employees within those establishments, and meeting with people, attempting to obtain jobs within the organization, sometimes conducting witness interviews with individuals that maybe have left the organization, or in some cases doing what we call John rolls, which is stopping individuals who are leaving the locations. So there's many different facets to an investigation prior to determining whether or not charges are going to be brought forth.
If, for example, in the investigation of Phoenix Scott's Temple, there were no undercover deals in terms of exchange agreement to exchange sex for money, that would have been very impactful in this investigation. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. There wouldn't be any going to the next step if that was the case.
If there were no undercover deals, we wouldn't be sitting here today, would we? In all likelihood.
We would not be.
Okay. Similarly, if there were no statements that you got from people like Jim Craven, Tamara Russo, other people, practitioners who worked at the temple about what was going on in those transformation chambers, we may very well not be here today, correct?
That is correct.
If, for example, Ms. Elise and Temple had put up ads in the health and wellness section of Backpage, or the community section of Backpage, we very well may not be here, is that correct?
That's correct.
Ms. Elise made some reference to the fact that, or some inference that she was, or the Temple had some 501(c)(3) status. Can you tell us what that even means?
Sure. 501c3 is a designator by the IRS, basically designating them as a nonprofit establishment. And that was not something through our investigation that we saw that they had been designated with.
In fact, you, through the course of the investigation, specifically learned at least at one point in 2011, Ms. Elise was not interested in getting that sort of status. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe it was June 23rd of 2011. I could be a couple days off on that date, but in June of 2011, her temple actually created a video where she was interviewed by another individual who was part of the temple, and she was asked why she didn't obtain a 501c3 status, and she went on for a couple of minutes explaining why she had no interest in obtaining that status, and mentioned that she didn't want the federal government sitting on the board of her church.
Regardless of the status, does whether or not the temple had that status or not, okay, did that have any impact in your investigation or decision to ultimately make arrests and bring charges?
It did not.
Ms. Elise at one point made some analogy to the investigations into the Catholic Church, specifically referencing investigations into allegations of people working with the Catholic Church who had engaged in pedophilia or molestation. Do you remember that?
I remember her asking that, yes.
If you got complaints about the Catholic, a specific Catholic church, a specific one, and the same thing in terms of a prostitution enterprise or illegal enterprise that's going on, would you have conducted the investigation in the same way?
The same way.
If, for example, there were 5 undercover deals at a Catholic church, would you have only arrested the 5 people involved, or would you have arrested everyone that you had information was engaging in the same practice?
If I could establish that the others were engaging in that practice, then they would also be arrested.
Which, again, Ms. Elise made some mention that, well, you only have these 5 prostitution deals. Explain just in a little detail about how it wasn't not just the 5 prostitution deals, but how you were able to utilize those 5 prostitution deals as a part of your overall investigation.
The 5 prostitution deals we have was indicative of the activity that was occurring. It's not feasible to obtain prostitution deals with every single person involved. It would take a tremendous amount of resources and extend the investigation. So what we did was determine, one, that all of the individuals that we were going to arrest were in fact practitioners of the same sort. Through interviews, we learned the expectations of those practitioners, what at a minimum they were required to provide during their sessions. Again, meaning a release or orgasm, ejaculation, and a topless session. And through research on various websites, like one being the Erotic Review, and I won't go into any detail with that, but a hobbyist website, finding specific information about the consistencies with which other practitioners behaved during their sessions, again, this is just according to the hobbyists. It was consistent across the board, meaning through statements of those leading the organization, like Janet Craven, through the gatekeepers establishing the protocol for all of the practitioners. We could determine that the practice of those 5 who we actually had prostitution deals with was consistent with the activity of all the other practitioners within the Phoenix Goddess Temple.
You mentioned, I think these are sort of terms that have just come up during cross-examination, but there's a website called the Erotic Review, also kind of known as TER, is that right?
Yes, there is.
And you mentioned another term, hobbyist. What is the Erotic Review? What is a hobbyist?
Erotic Review is...
Approach, please.
I'm objecting because I thought we agreed there would be no hearsay, and nothing on the Erotic Review was put up by anyone at the Phoenix Goddess Temple. It was written about people having experiences. There's no way to find the author of these writings. If you go to that website, it actually says this is for your entertainment. They designed that website to be Penthouse Forum, basically, to take the Penthouse Forum, put it online, let people read juicy tidbits about what they did. I have presented to this court evidence that I ask for us to never be part of it, and this is hearsay. When they talk about these people writing about what happened to Temple, I have no way to confront the person who wrote the review. They're talking in wide generalities here, not specifics, wide generalities. This does not need to be discussed. It's hearsay.
Judge, we dealt with this issue yesterday, and my contention was Ms. Elise had specifically opened the door, and this court agreed with into the Erotic Review for the limited purpose of explaining both what the Erotic Review is and how Detective Campbell utilized the Erotic Review. This court was very clear, and I am going to abide by the court's ruling that we are not to get into the content of those reviews, and my line of questioning did not elicit content. In fact, we're specifically talking in general terms about what it is right now, and I was going to only get into that Detective Campbell utilized information from that as a part of her ongoing investigation, but not into the content.
And to determine that this was not a church, but that there was illegal activity going on at
Correct.
the establishment.
Yes.
Your Honor, as long as I'm able to put in the 2 or 3, I think it was 3 emails where I communicated with the Erotic Review and said, we don't want to be part of this. We want you to monitor it. We want you to never allow anything published here from us. As long as I can insert that later, I'm okay with this.
Well, there's no, I mean, the state's not going to stipulate to emails that I've never seen or don't even know.
No, I already gave them to you, Mr. Leiter. They were in my motion about hearsay testimony with Erotic Review.
Well, that can
you
come
actually
up.
have them.
It can come up down the road.
Okay.
But for now, you may proceed. Your objection is noted and overruled.
Second, you continue in your discussion specifically about the erotic review and how you utilize it as an investigative detective.
We just use it as a tool to kind of get an idea of the activity of individuals that are being reviewed. The Erotic Review is a website where you can get some basic information about individuals that are advertising their services as prostitutes. And if you are a paying member or a member that reviews various women that you've engaged in prostitution with, you then have access to the full reviews of women involved. And the full reviews include specific sexual acts, how you were greeted, that kind of thing. It goes into a lot of detail of exactly what your encounter was like with that particular woman working as a prostitute, including their physical description, breast size, how you rated them as a performer meaning their act of prostitution. And so we use it just as a way to kind of get a sense of, are they having sessions, are they doing out calls, which means that the girls are going out to the customers or coming in. We just use it as a general tool as to what people have said about various girls that are working in this industry. And you mentioned hobbyists, or I mentioned hobbyists, and you asked me to kind of talk a little bit about that. A hobbyist is just somebody within the prostitution realm who engages in acts of prostitution on a regular basis. They refer to themselves as hobbyists, and they often submit many reviews to the website, the Erotic Review, so that other hobbyists can learn about the acts of what the women will and will not do, and kind of how they look and how they perform.
Detective, without going into any of the specific reviews that you read in your investigation of this case, how did you look for erotic review posts or reviews that were attached to various people that were connected to the case?
Yes, I had an interest in determining whether or not any of them appeared on the Erotic Review website and were reviewed individuals.
And does the fact that there were some of the practitioners who had postings on the Erotic Review, did that figure into your ultimate investigation or continuing investigation?
Yes, it did. Because some of those individuals were not individuals that we had obtained any kind of a prostitution deal with, but that undercover prostitution deal with, but they were practitioners within the Phoenix Goddess Temple.
And again, that speaks to you linking other practitioners beyond the 5 who did undercover deals, but linking other practitioners to an overall practice at the Goddess Temple. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Ms. Elise has talked at length about content of specifically the Phoenix Goddess Temple website. Have you come across in your experience a website that says, hey, you can have oral sex for $200? Is that something that you come across on your website? Or in your work as a detective, rather?
No, we don't see that.
Because right there, that's prostitution. You could make an arrest based on whoever made that website. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Ms. Elise made some comments about a line of questioning about human trafficking. This case has nothing to do with human or sexual trafficking, correct?
Correct.
This is an investigation into what you refer to as an enterprise or illegal control of an enterprise, correct?
Correct.
All right. Yesterday, do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
I want to specifically draw your attention to a couple of portions of
Yes, I do.
During the course of your investigation, did you learn about why that specific language was included in what I think you referred to as a seeker form, correct?
Yes, this is a seeker form. It's my understanding that that line item was placed there to ensure, one, that the person's not expecting a massage, because a massage would be illegal in that it's not a licensed massage establishment with licensed massage therapists providing those massages. So I would imagine that's why that was placed in there.
And then I want to draw your attention to just below that. I think you read this. I'm not going to ask you to read it again, but this specific line item in which the seeker is asked to check talks about that there's no, it's not going to be necessarily any sexual gratification. Is that correct?
Correct.
This, detective, to things that you've seen before in your experience in terms of what's on an actual back page yet?
Yeah, I've mentioned before that many of the women, maybe even men, posting in the escort section or posting on Backpage do have something similar to that. Basically, usually a picture or a tagline that says something very similar, that by contacting me, you agree that we will, you're paying me for my time and not for any kind of sexual gratification or sexual acts. It doesn't constitute an act of prostitution. Some sort of disclaimer like that appears on a lot of advertisements.
In your experience in terms of responding to those advertisements, is what's contained in those disclaimers actually how the person who's making the ad actually will deal with somebody who comes and answers those ads? As far as, does that mean, well, it's on, I won't engage in this because I put it on the ad. Is that been your experience?
No, it's definitely not the case that they're still engaging in acts of prostitution. It's just a matter of appearing legitimate on the surface for any law enforcement monitoring their activities.
One thing that will certainly be brought up in much more detail that has only been really hinted at, but is during the investigation, there were enormous amounts of financial records that were, in some cases, pretty immaculately kept by various people at the Goddess Temple, who worked at the Goddess Temple. Is that correct?
Yes, very good.
And again, referring back to Ms. Elise talking again and again about only the 500 cover deals, and only the 500 cover deals. Were those financial records critical in your investigation and decision to ultimately bring charges against a number of other practitioners that didn't have other cover deals?
Most definitely. They kept very detailed records of sessions, numbers of sessions, the amount of hours of sessions, and how much money was tithed from each of those sessions back to the temple. It was, their record keeping was all in an Excel spreadsheet and was very detailed.
Okay. There may be a little confusion, and I want you to elaborate on the value of prostitution deals that occurred in this particular investigation. I think there were 2 prostitution deals that occurred outside of the actual Phoenix Goddess Temple building.
We made the decision, myself and Detective Herman as co-case agents on this, we made the decision to intentionally contact individuals that were not conducting sessions within the temple as a way to determine, one, in the one interaction with Audrey Starr, she was advertising as working in both the temple and at her home, and so we wanted to figure out, this was early on in our investigation, we wanted to determine, is that allowed? Were individuals allowed to conduct sessions both within the temple and also in their own private residences? And so we had an interest in contacting her and having an undercover meet with her to kind of talk through that in an undercover capacity to see if there was in fact an affiliation or if it was condoned by Ms. Elise. The second deal was by design, again, contacting somebody outside the temple who we knew had just previously been working within the temple to determine, one, was she practicing in the same manner? Was her session spiritual in nature? Was she still with the temple? Was she not? Kind of what the interaction was. And if she was not with the temple, we were hoping that by meeting with her, we could later interview her and determine why she was no longer with the temple and see if it could shed some light for us as to the practices of the temple.
Ms. Elise made a mention of millions and millions of dollars that were spent on this investigation. You've been part of this case from the point that you got that article. Have you ever heard that number? Are you aware of anything like that as the case agent?
No, I'm not aware of that number being thrown out, and nor has there been any talk of trying to quantify the dollar amounts spent.
Okay. Ms. Elise has made, through cross-examination, some mention of this idea of outreach or trying to get men who have various sexual problems. Let me ask you this. As far as what you've learned in your investigation, did the men who responded to the Backpage ads, did they have to have any training before going into the transformation chamber?
They did not.
So, did they have to take any class about, here's what we're about before going into the transformation chamber?
They did not.
So, basically, they called they'd see an ad in the escort, dominatrix, or body rock section of Backpage, correct?
Correct.
They call the gatekeeper, schedule an appointment, and go into the session, right? That's it.
That's correct.
There were over 2,000 photos plus that were taken as a part of the investigation specifically at the Phoenix Goddess Temple, correct?
Yes.
Every room in the entire temple, bedroom, office, bathroom, photos were taken of all of it, correct?
Correct.
All of the things referenced by Ms. Elise, the altars, the photos on the walls, pictures, all of that was part of this investigation and was taken, correct?
Correct.
But at the end of the day, as the chief investigating officer, does the fact that there's altars or photos or whatever those may be, does that have any impact on the decision to make an arrest for illegal control of an enterprise?
It did not.
A moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Okay.
You may. Okay, thank you. Yes, you may.
Like I'm showing you, this is marked as Exhibit 88. Just take a quick look at the context. Are you familiar with there's a card, an envelope, a little letter, and there's a 4 or 5 page document in Exhibit 88. You know what those pieces of paper?
Yes, I am.
What is your knowledge about what's contained in Exhibit 88?
This is some paperwork related to the Oklahoma Native American Church, some printouts that I previously took of their website about benefits of becoming a member of their church, along with the enrollment card that I received in the mail after paying to belong to their church.
Letter that came with the card that was sent after paying the amount of money, is that correct?
Yes, this letter came inside with the card, and this I printed out separately.
The card itself, the photo on that, who's that a photo?
That's Detective Murray within our unit.
And all of those documents, the document and the card, the envelope, that was all information that you obtained in your investigation, specifically the Oklahoma Native American Church as a part of its connection with Phoenix Goddess Temple. Is that correct?
It's all documentation from the Oklahoma Native American Church. I don't know about its affiliation with the Phoenix Goddess Temple, but separate.
Maybe I wasn't clear, but that you obtained in your investigation of the connection.
Correct.
Okay. Say we move Exhibit 88.
Any objection? Exhibit 88 is admitted. You may.
I'm showing you the card that communicated was received from the Oklahoma Native American Church. Well, the photo on there, you said that's of the name on there says Eric Slider, but that's actually Detective Device Unit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And this was, I think you would briefly describe the jury's sending away, paying the amount of money to get a card back from the Native American, from the Oklahoma Church. Is that correct?
Correct.
I'm showing you the reverse side of the card from Exhibit 88. Looks like it's been expanded a little bit, but is the language appear to be very, very similar to the language that was on Miss Elise's card in terms of the protections that were garnered to whoever paid the $100 and got this card?
It's very similar, yes.
A brief reference in Miss Elise's cross-examination to this idea of a blacklist. Tell the jury a little bit more about what you found in your investigation about a blacklist or
Yeah, there was no specific blacklist, but we did locate a seeker form, one of the forms like you just showed, that had at the top, seeker did not tithe, like making note of the fact that this particular person did not tithe. And then there was also some notes in the back of a notebook. I believe there were 3 individuals that were listed as shady seekers. So that information was found.
and specifically in the shady seeker paperwork that you found, it indicated that they hadn't paid the full amount for a session. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, in the course of your investigation, and Ms. Elise has talked at length about people who just come in, they don't have to pay, but in the course of your investigation, you talked to all the practitioners and Janet Craven, what did you learn about what would happen if someone didn't pay in a given session?
We learned from the practitioners that they had an expectation that they would be paid, and when they weren't, and they did not tithe back to the temple, Janet Craven would often intervene and contact those seekers via telephone and ask them why they did not tithe, or ask them if they forgot to tithe. We heard from some of the practitioners that many of them had simply forgotten to leave the money, and so they actually returned to the temple to leave their money. And they were also questioned about if there was any dissatisfaction with the session they received that maybe led them to not tithing.
Bottom line is, if the guys aren't paying the $204 an hour, the temples, the lights are turned off, there's nowhere for these people to sleep and live. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
All of the classes and lessons and everything that Ms. Elise has discussed, none of that exists unless men respond to Backpage ads and pay $204 an hour, correct?
Correct.
Sustained.
Thank you, sir.
All right, looks like we have some questions in the basket. I have one additional question. Council, Ms. Elise, please approach. We have juror questions 1 through 4. Is there any objection to these questions? Please read them and let me know if you have an objection to any of them.
Well, the Ms. Elise has a chance to look at this.
No objection and recommendation. The state has no objections to questions 2, 3, and 4. We do have an objection to question number 1.
You're objecting to question 1.
Yes. Do you object to question 1?
It strikes me that we haven't covered enough for that she would have to decide. I'm going to say yes. I agree to not have this.
All right. I'll sustain the objection since you both agree. Juror question 1 will not be allowed.
Yes, I don't believe she can answer question 2 either. What is an elder Native American medicine and woman card, and is it genuine? I mean, I think she gave the testimony, she bought one on the website, but I don't think she understands the underpinnings of the ministry and why we would do it.
I think in terms of evaluating her credibility, the jury is entitled to know if she has the answer to that question, and she can say she doesn't. Any objection?
No objection.
It's 2 more?
That's it.
I thought we had 4 questions.
Oh, I thought you saw it. You didn't see 3 and 4?
I think she saw them. I don't know if she...
I thought you did see them.
I did, and I thought we were going through each one. And those are the answers.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, Detective, the jurors have some questions for you. During the investigation, did you see any other churches advertising on the same website as the temple, Backpage.com?
I did not.
What is an Elder Native American Medicine Man Woman card?
I don't know specifically what an elder Native American man card is. I believe what you may be referring to are those Oklahoma Native American cards, like the one that was just shown on the screen. I don't know if elder medicine men have those same cards or not. I know that their church does issue those cards, as demonstrated by the fact that I was able to obtain one in the name of Eric Slider.
Is it genuine?
Is it genuine, meaning the card?
Correct.
It's not my opinion that it's genuine and that I was just responsible for paying $40 and I could get this card without any kind of training, spiritual affiliation. Literally, it was paying a fee and getting one mailed out to me that same day.
It was brought up that the inside of the location looked like a church. Most churches have a sign outside that have the dates and times of the services. Was there such a sign at this location?
There was a yin-yang sign on, like, close to the street on 24th Street. But I don't recall seeing a sign that said Phoenix Goddess Temple outside. And I also don't recall seeing hours of operation outside for the general public to see.
In addition, during the investigation, was there any ads in any newspapers under the church or religion section for the temple?
You know, I couldn't answer that question only because we typically, newspapers used to be utilized, newspapers and magazines, for prostitution-related activities, but within the last probably 4 or 5 years, or maybe even longer, it's all moved online. So during the course of our investigation, we actually did not pick up the newspaper and check that on a daily basis, so I can't say for certain one way or another whether or not they advertised in the newspaper. I didn't find any links to specific advertisements when I did searches. I think the Arizona Republic is connected to AZ Central, and oftentimes advertisements might come up online. Our research was just done online, and I did not look into newspaper articles, so I can't say that they did or they did not. I just simply don't know.
All right, follow up from the state to those juror questions.
During the research that you did do both online, you said you didn't do any newspaper research. Did you ever find advertisements for the Phoenix Goddess Temple in religion or community, classes type places anywhere on the web?
I did not see anything in any locations related to what you just mentioned.
Okay. The advertisements you did find, all of which were encompassed in either the dominatrix section, the body rub section, or the escort section in the adult part of Backpage.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Ms. Elise, any follow up to the juror questions?
Yes, I did see that symbol. It was very large.
Objection outside the scope.
All right, overall, you may answer.
Have I ever joined a church? I consider joining a church the affiliation I have with my church, so maybe the word choice that I used was not entirely accurate or indicative of what I mean by that. I refer to myself joining a church, but maybe that's not the correct terminology.
Were you raised in it? Did you actually, as an adult, make a decision? I'm going to go to this community.
I made the decision as an adult to join or to involve myself with that community.
And when you join a community like a church, did you fill out a little member registration card or anything like that?
I did not.
Did you ever make tithes of support
I do.
Okay. You view this online joining of the church as insincere because no one talked to you about it?
I view it as insincere because there's language all throughout that refers to the ability with this card, you are now joining a church that's out of state, and you're joining it for the purpose of being able to engage in drug activity. It's the way I see it based on the language on their website along with the language on the back of the card. It's all about drugs and utilizing those drugs during ceremonies. So
There's actually many ceremonies listed on the Native American website, blanket ceremonies, there's tons of ceremonies.
I agree.
And the one that's the hot button for society has to do with certain ceremonies. The hot button might, for the church, might be accusations of drugs. That's kind of what we're talking about right now. You're like, hey, this looks like they're trying to offer protection.
Yeah, because the letter that they included, I didn't read it, but the letter they included and the verbiage on their website specifically refers to the drugs, or the peyote and the cannabis and the other drugs. It doesn't discuss the protections against blanket ceremonies or whatever other ceremonies. It's specifically to the drugs.
Correct. The other ceremonies have never been attacked by the government. That's why they're not listed as protection, because no one attacks you from blanket ceremony.
Is there a question?
Sustained.
And I'd like to make a correction. Do you agree that the church does not use the word drugs, they use the word theft?
Correct. Correct.
When you were rolling around on the Native American website, the National Native American website, did you observe a page about ceremonies that talk about holy anointing and laying on of hands? Did you visit that website?
Objection outside the scope of the question, Judge.
Sustained. Sustained.
So, Detective, I'm asking you a question, yes or no, with what it says on the Native American membership card. It actually says, laws pertaining to the protection of all ONAC members, civil liberties are outlined. Laws pertaining to the protection of ONAC members, civil liberties are outlined in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution, and more specifically described in the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Person Act of 2000. So, my question for you, Detective, are the laws that you're applying to the Phoenix Goddess Temple, are they do you agree, Detective, that these laws exist? The Constitution, the Religious Land Use, do you agree that those laws exist?
I do. Yes.
And explain your thought process that you didn't need to pay attention to this, all this. You didn't need to pay attention to the religious land use. How is it that the laws you're enforcing are, which are local county laws, is that true that we're enforcing county law right now?
Objection outside the scope, Your Honor.
Sustained.
What jurisdiction are we being charged in? Is this the county jurisdiction?
Maricopa County, yes.
So, this law that we just saw on the card is a federal law which supersedes.
Objection outside the scope, misstates the law, Judge.
Sustained.
Do you agree that every religious group has
Yes. Yes.
And is it commonplace for, in your experience, for people to sign up to go to church? They'll say, send me mailings, put me on your mailing list, I'll tithe out of my paycheck, things like that. We've seen that in churches.
My answer is no to the first part of your question, but yes to the second part.
Okay. So you actually have never signed up to say, I'm now a member and I'm that little card.
Correct.
Do you agree that every church you've ever set foot into solicited donations to help with it?
Yes, they passed around offering baskets.
Right. What about private ceremonies? People might pay a special amount for a personalized ceremony like marriage. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree.
Did you have to take a class to join the church that you joined before you joined it?
No, I did not.
You didn't have to pass a test of sincerity to express an interest and join the church. No one said, are you sincere?
No, they did not.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 10-minute recess. 10 minutes. Please remember the admonition. You are excused.
Get to the point. You don't have to listen to me deliver 2 hours or
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and counsel. The state may call its next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, the state calls Detective Travis Tenney to the stand.
Detective, please come forward to be sworn right up here.
do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Detective, whenever you're ready, can you state your full name for the jury and spell your last name?
Detective Travis Kenny, Kenney.
And Detective, are you employed with the Phoenix Police Department?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been with Phoenix?
I've been with the Phoenix Police Department for 17 years.
And what is your current assignment?
I'm a detective in the Vice Unit.
Your 17 years with Phoenix Police Department, how many of those have been spent in Vice?
9 years.
Are you in the same unit as Detective Campbell?
Yes, I am.
And would it be fair to say that one of the primary duties that you have working in the Vice Unit is to investigate allegations of prostitution?
Yes, it is.
And as your duties as a detective investigating prostitution, is it common for you to work undercover?
Yes, it is.
Specific or a type of role that you typically play when you go undercover in prostitution?
Yes, I try to just have a generic job, something that's uninteresting that nobody cares about.
I guess my question may be, I asked the wrong question.
Sorry.
In terms of the role of who you're playing, is there a certain person you convey? I assume you're probably not playing a female prostitute.
Oh, no, I gotcha. No, I am the customer. Usually I'm the one that's, asking the girl for prostitution activity.
Can you give me just a little bit of an idea of your experience of going undercover? How many times, I'm sure there's not an exact number, but how many times have you gone undercover posing as a customer or a John?
Like you said, I could not give an exact number, but it's in the hundreds. I've been doing it for 9 years.
Detective Campbell, during her testimony, touched a little bit on this, but just since you're our first male undercover detective, can you just give a little bit of an idea as a Phoenix police detective what you are allowed or not allowed to do when you go undercover?
So, yeah, when we go undercover, we're not allowed, our main rules, we're not allowed to expose ourselves, and we're not allowed to touch the girl. A lot of times they want you to touch them to prove that you're not the police, and we can't do that.
Are there times where, because of the circumstances, you get exposed, you have to do something at that point?
Yeah, if there's an incident where we are naked and exposed, we got to end the exposure, basically, cover up.
Detective, in April of 2011, were you asked to assist in an investigation of the Phoenix conflict?
Yes, I was,
In what capacity?
in an undercover capacity.
Prior to that time, had you ever been to the Phoenix conflict?
No, I had not.
Were you provided with an online advertisement related to this case by one of the assigned cases?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall what type of an advertisement it was?
I think it was just an advertisement stating their services or like the prices and what they would do. I can't remember the specifics of the ad, though.
For example, was it a Backpage.com ad?
I think it was Eros.
Can you explain to the jury what Eros is?
Eros is much like Backpage, but it has like a section that's nationwide. There's a section in there for escorts. You can find them locally. So a lot of the escorts advertise in there, and then the customers, such as myself, would go on and look in the Phoenix section to find a girl that interests me. Call her.
Yes.
Detective, I'm handing you what's been marked as exhibit number 70, a 3-page document that I, prior to handing to you, took out of the packaging. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It is the Eros ad that I located and used to call the girl in the ad.
And I'm going to show the ad in a second, but does it have information in terms of who it is you're calling and what they have for?
Yes, it does.
That ad appears to be the same ad that you responded to back in April 2011.
Yes, it does.
You're on a statement here for this.
And the number on that, Detective?
Number 70.
70?
70.
Any objection? Exhibit 70 is admitted.
Sorry. Do you want the... Yes. Yes, she does. Yes, it does. Yes, there is. Yes, correct. Yes, there is. Well, it says right in there for an hour of hands-on touch, it would cost me between $204 and $304. Yes, correct. Yes, correct. Yes, it is. Yes, it does.
On April 12th of 2011, did you call the number on that particular advertisement to try to schedule an appointment after that?
Yes, I did.
And when you called, did you speak with somebody over the phone?
Yes, I did.
Do you know at this time who it is that you spoke to at that time?
No, I don't.
Was it a male or a female?
It was a female.
Do you recall anything from that conversation?
No, I just called to set up an appointment with Aphrodite.
Do you recall whether the female, when you went to set up the appointment, asked for any information from you?
I think she wanted my phone number, but I told her I would call back the next day.
Do you recall telling the female over the phone that you wanted to be discreet because you had a wife and didn't want her to call you?
Yes, correct.
How did the female respond to that?
She was fine with that. She said just call back the next day to confirm the appointment.
We're going to be playing a little bit later a recording of your interaction. Did you record that particular conversation?
No, that was not recorded.
And you may have said this already. When you scheduled the appointment, when did you schedule it
It was for the next day, the 13th, I think.
for? On the next day, which would have been April 13th of 2011, you called the temple members. Okay?
Yes, I did. I just called to reconfirm my appointment and make sure that it was still a go.
And were you told that it was?
Yes, I was.
Other than that, anything else significant during that conversation?
No.
Later that day, did you go to the VA's office?
Yes, I did.
And was that located at 2728 North 24th Street?
Yes, it was.
And is that particular location within Maricopa County?
Yes, it is.
You mentioned this before. Was this the first time you had been to the VA's office?
Yeah, first time.
Your interaction, and by interaction, I mean when you went to the temple on this particular day,
Yes, it was recorded.
audio, video, both.
Audio only.
Is that common for you to do in this type of investigation?
Yes, it is.
While this is being recorded, are there other detectives who are listening to what's happening?
Yes, there is.
Can you describe, detective, what is the first thing you remember happening when you walked into the house?
I walked in and I was greeted by a receptionist. I explained that I was there for Aphrodite at a 3 o'clock appointment. She took me to a side room. I remember there was like a chair and a table, and she had me fill out a paper for new clients. Yes, it is.
Initial the boxes and sign your name or give a name.
Yes, I did.
Was there any conversation with the female at that time about whether you had to give a real name or give a fake name, anything of that nature?
Yeah, she said I did not have to use my real name.
At that point, did you wait then for Aphrodite to come into the room?
Yes, I just waited in the room that she took me in, and I waited for Aphrodite to come and get me.
You talked a little bit, detective, about then what happened once Aphrodite came and got you.
Aphrodite came, introduced herself. We left. She kind of showed me a couple of the rooms in the temple. and eventually taking me back to a room on the far east side where it was Aphrodite's room.
What happened at that?
At that point, we just started talking about the temple. She explained what Tantra is. I don't know anything about it, so she kind of was explaining it to me. We had just some regular conversation, but I was telling her I had a problem with premature ejaculation. She explained that she could help me with that. She eventually, we got to a point where she explained that it was for the hour. She asked if I wanted an hour and a half or an hour. I told her I wanted an hour. And it got to a point where she told me it was $204. And I asked her specifically why it was $204, and she explained why the $204. And she told me just to leave the money on the counter, and then she left the room. Or she told me to get comfortable, remove my clothes, and then she left the room.
At some point during this portion of your interaction with Aphrodite, did you ask her at that point whether the two of you were going to have sex?
Yes. She talked about, there was conversation about massaging my penis until I get to like number 7 or number 8, about ready to climax, let her know, and then she would back down. And with that conversation, I asked her if we were going to actually have sex. On this occasion, she said she doesn't have sex with her clients on the first meeting, but she does that on subsequent meetings.
She indicated to you that you would have she indicated to you that you were going to have a happy ending.
Yes, she said I would have a happy ending, and she made a motion with the right hand of a hand job.
And in your experience, the happy ending usually means ejaculation.
Yes, it does.
Do you recall if you asked her at any point when it is that you were supposed to say that?
I don't recall if I specifically asked when, but when she was leaving the room, she said or prior to her leaving the room, she said to put the $204 down on the counter.
Did you put the $204 on the counter?
Yes, I did.
And when she left the room at that time, what was the understanding of what you were supposed to do at that?
I was supposed to get undressed and lay down on the table.
At that point in time, in your opinion, based on your experience, that you made a
Yes.
Did you make the decision at that point to end your experience at the time?
Yes, I did.
Do you typically have some sort of plan in place in terms of what you're going to say or what you're going to do to try to leave?
Yes. I don't recall what the specific word was, but I let the monitoring team know that I had a prostitution deal and that they're supposed to call me to help me back out of the deal. Because obviously, like I said earlier, we can't go through with the deal, so we have to back out. And that's the way to do it.
Whether she gave you the money back or you still left money out of that work?
She gave me $100 of it back.
At that point?
And yes, then I left.
Other than the receptionist who took you back to the room initially, and then after that, you had that conversation with, did you interact with anybody else after God is something there?
No, nobody else.
At any point, detective, either prior to getting to the temple or during the time you were at the temple, were you ever told that you had to have any sort of spiritual belief or belief or experience in Tantra in order to go and do one of these things?
No.
Yes.
Detective, I'm handing you what's marked as exhibit number 2. You recognize that, right?
Yes, it's the audio recording of the undercover deal.
Is it an accurate depiction of what was said by both you and the other individuals you interacted with back on that day?
Yes, it is.
Any objection? All right, Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Your Honor, at this time I'm going to play Exhibit 2 for the court.
Yes, you may.
Before I do that, Judge, during certain portions of the recording, including the beginning, there's dead time. So if Ms. Elise has no objection, I'd like to fast forward through the dead time of the recording where there's no talking.
Any objection?
Well, Your Honor, it sounds strange if you don't have the sound totality in. I don't know what technology Mr. Sanders is using to stop and start at the right place. Is there a lot of dead time? I'd rather just say a lot of dead time.
There is one portion where there's over 20 minutes of dead time where there's no talking, Judge. It's admitted, so if Ms. Elise wants to play anything I don't play later on or in cross.
All right. You may proceed.
Detective, at this portion, is this where Aphrodite is taking you and showing you several rooms in the temple?
Yes, correct.
may have determined some of the portions of the recording are difficult to hear in a courtroom. If you want to maybe let the jury know that they'll have an opportunity if they want to play these.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, all of the admitted exhibits will go back with you to the jury room during deliberations, and you will be provided with the equipment so that you may replay any of these recordings that you would like. All right.
Detective, after you left Phoenix Goddess Temple on that particular day, did you have an opportunity to meet with Detective Amanda Herman?
Yes, I did.
Is that another detective in your unit?
Yes, she is.
Did she show you a photograph at that time?
Yes, she did.
Did you recognize the photograph?
Yes, it was Aphrodite, the same girl that I just had to deal with.
And at that time, you learned that Aphrodite was actually identified as Rebecca Carrera?
Yes, I did.
Detective, during questioning of Detective Campbell, either today or earlier this week, she was asked questions about why the male undercover detectives, when they wrote police reports in this case, never mentioned the statutes or the chopper charts or those kinds of things. Let me ask you, first of all, did you write a report regarding your visit to the temple in that particular day?
Yes, I did.
And in your report, did you do, to the best of your ability, summarize the conversations that you had inside of the temple?
Yes, I did.
At any point during your interaction that day, either with the person who I think you said was the receptionist or with Aphrodite, did any of them talk to you about the statutes or the chakra charts or anything of that nature?
No, they did not.
Do you feel that it was important to mention any of those things in your report?
No.
In your experience as a detective, have you gotten undercover into the software?
Yes, I have.
Is it uncommon for there to be those types of things? Maybe you can explain a little bit about some of the things you see
No, it's not uncommon to see some of that stuff, Buddhist statues or pictures of serene settings or stuff that's Asian related.
Detective, on April 21st of 2011, were you again asked to assist detectives with the Phoenix Goddess Temple investigation?
Yes, I was.
Were you again asked to go undercover and meet one of the practitioners from the Goddess Temple?
Yes, I was.
In this particular case, were you asked to set up a meet or a session with somebody who went by Soleil?
Yes, I was.
That's spelled S-O-L-E-I. Were you again provided with an advertisement?
I was.
Do you recall what website this advertisement was from?
I do not recall.
Write a report, detective.
Yes, I did.
Write a report in regards to your interaction with Soleil.
Yes, I did.
In your report, did you also talk about the advertisement that you were asked to call her from?
Yes, I did.
You may.
Detective, I've handed you a copy of your report. If you could use that just to refresh your recollection in terms of what website the advertisement.
It was from Backpage.com.
And we saw earlier the advertisement from Aphrodite. Do you have the advertisement, or does the police department still have the advertisement that you used to contact Soleil?
No, we did not.
Did you note in your report what was listed on the advertisement?
Yes, I did.
You can note for the jury what kind of information was in the particular backstage advertisement.
You want me to read it from the report or just kind of summarize it?
Approach, please. Okay, what's your objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Throughout this entire process, the team that wants to make what we're doing illegal conveniently changes words. They also don't have, and I feel that he shouldn't be able to say what was in the ad because there's no.
Okay. Speak as loudly as you can.
Okay, he should not be able to say what he thought was in the ad when there's no proof of what he left out. For example, when Aphrodite's ad was just displayed, they didn't discuss any of the divine, the healing. They just focused on the money. So it's going to give an unbalanced. Actually, I know that the prosecution has asked the record keeper of Backpage to provide all of the ads. So I believe that the actual ad will be forthcoming and we could share it at that time. Would that be a good compromise? That way nothing is, because by omission, lots of harm has been done here, by omission.
We've attempted to locate the advertisement, Judge. It doesn't appear it was ever impounded into evidence. It doesn't appear to be part of the subpoenaed records that came from Backpage.com. If I had it, I would be using it today.
You know why? It's because you have to ask for her phone number, because you guys subpoenaed just our phone number, but if you ask for her, you probably get it.
And that might be why, but we don't have the advertisement. I don't have to go into everything. I'm trying to use it just to explain how he contacted her and that he used the advertisement for that purpose, and also that it had a money amount. Other than that, if she's objecting, I don't need to go into the other information, but to be fair, I was going to have him read the entire advertisement.
Right.
But he put it in his report, correct?
Correct.
So if he testifies that he put everything that was in the ad in his report?
He couldn't have possibly, he's only going to write the part that's like legally actionable. He's not going to put the word healing or divine goddess or light. He's not going to write that
As long as you make clear that he summarized in his report, it refreshes his recollection about what was pertinent to him, but he did not include everything that was in the ad. All right, so the objection's overruled.
In your report, all of the writing that was on the advertisement, or did you just do a summary of it?
No, I copied the ad.
In the advertisement, does it give a phone number?
Yes, it does.
And does it have just one or are there multiple?
There's multiple.
Why?
One was for Soleil and one was for the temple.
So when you say one for Soleil, was it your impression, personal number for her?
Yes, correct.
Anywhere in the advertisement, did it list the dollar amount?
Yes, it did.
What was the dollar amount listed in the ad?
It was $200 for an hour.
Did it indicate what that $200 was for, or did it give any sort of information in terms of what that meant?
No, it did not.
This particular case, when you called the advertisement to set up the session, did you call the personal number or did you call the number for the goddess number?
I called the personal number.
And for this part of the investigation, was there a decision made to try to meet with Soleil outside of the goddess number?
Yes, there was.
And when you called the personal number, did somebody answer the phone?
Yes,
Was it a female?
it was.
How did she identify herself?
It was Megan.
And did you indicate during this conversation that you wanted to set up an appointment?
Yes, I did.
And was one set up?
Yes, it was.
Do you recall if it was that day or a different day?
It was for that day.
Where did she ask you to meet?
Out in Chandler.
In Chandler? Did she-
Sorry, she gave me cross streets. I can't remember. It was Arizona Avenue, and I can't recall. Can I look at my report to reflect my recollection? Arizona Avenue and Germain. Yes, correct.
She didn't give you any more specific information at that point in terms of where
Correct.
when you spoke to her on the phone at that point in time, did she indicate that she would give you information once you got to that area about the specific part?
Yes.
Is that common detective or undercover investigation? Emails advertising the
Yeah, all the escorts that I've ever dealt with do that. They want to control the time that you get there so that you don't show up early or you have their address for any other reason.
Later that day, did you go to the area that she gave you?
Yes, I did.
When you got to that area, did you
Yes, I did.
and at some point did you speak with her again?
Yes, I did.
At that point, did she give you a specific location where you were?
Yes, she did.
And was it an apartment?
It was an apartment complex, correct.
Similar to the interaction that we already talked about
with Aphrodite, was this interaction also?
Yes, it was.
And you knock on the door, she answered, that type of thing?
Yes, I knocked on the door and she answered.
Other than who identified herself as Megan, was there anybody else to your knowledge?
No, I did not see anybody else in there.
Fair to say it was you.
Correct.
You describe or give just a little bit of a summary, we're kind of coming up on the end of the day, give a summary of what happened after you
Knocked on the door, she answered. Immediately off to her right, she took me into a room, and in that room, there was a massage table in the center. We had some conversation. She explained, asked me to get undressed to my level of comfortness, and when I was ready for her, to slide the $200 under the door.
You bring up the money, do you recall, or is that something she
I don't recall. I think she brought it up, but I don't recall exactly.
brought up? In terms of $200, she asked you to slide it under the door through her.
She did not say to her. She just said when I was ready, slide the money under the door.
Have any conversation with her at any point while you're inside the apartment about what was going to happen?
Yes. Basically, I used the same conversation. I told her that I was having a problem with premature ejaculation, and we had a conversation about how she was going to help me during this session, help me learn how to control it. Yeah, let me just real quick. She explained that she went to school. She went to school at the Goddess Temple. She also did some online classes on learning to massage. She called it a lingam. And I asked her what that was because I had no idea. She said that was a penis. She learned how to massage the penis, and that's what we would be doing during this session.
Your impression, based on this conversation, that you were going to have, or she was going to have sexual contact?
Yes, correct.
Did you actually receive some sort of massage during this session?
Yes, I did.
Explain what happened or what you
I was laying face down, had a towel covering my butt. She gave me a massage on my back and my legs, eventually removing the towel. And I think at that time I had enough for the deal. Again, I gave the code word and backed out of the deal.
At some point, detective, during your conversation, again, we'll play this on 24, during your conversation with her, she indicated to you that she had previously worked at massage parlor.
Yes, she did.
Anything else specifically in terms of what she told you she did at the massage parlor?
She said she learned that she had a talent for erotic massage, and she didn't like working there because it was $30 to get in the door, and then it was all upsell once you're in the room with the girl.
In your line of work, detective, does the word upsell mean?
Yes. In the massage parlors that we typically go to, it's $30, $40 for a half-hour massage. And then when we're in there, that's just for the massage, basically get in the room, and then they upsell you for more hand job, blow job, sex.
At some point during the conversations that you were having with Megan, she talked about the fact of whether she worked at the penis cutter.
Yes, she said that she did.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please return on Monday at 10:30. Monday at 10:30. Please remember the admonition. Are there any questions? All right, have a nice holiday. We'll see you on Monday. Thank you. Detective, you may step down. Thank you. Do we have anyone in the back of the courtroom who's here because of Judge Kramer? Yes, you are. Okay, come on up. All right, anything else, counsel?
Not from the state, Judge.
No? Okay. Happy Thanksgiving.
You, Judge.